Chapter 1152. When the Naga woke up, her golden pupils condensed layer by layer, looking real, mysterious, and gorgeous. Of course, at this time, her eyes had nothing to do with humans. They were more like the eyes of a dragon. Her pupils were like burning flames, gorgeous and gorgeous. Then, her figure gradually condensed and finally turned into a human. Her snow-white body was still curvy, and her whole body was full of dreamy beauty. After a long time, she said, "Didn't you want to break up with me? Didn't you always want to leave and exile me in the ruins? Then why didn't you leave when I was seriously injured? Why did you save me?" These words were so arrogant that Yang Dingtian didn't want to answer. "What, you don't even want to answer me now?" the Naga Shuang said. Yang Dingtian was completely speechless. The Naga before was also unreasonable, but she didn't care about reason, and was directly cold and ruthless. How did he turn from being unreasonable to being arrogant and unreasonable? Yang Dingtian bit his lip, still didn't know how to answer. The Naga Shuang hugged her knees, sat cross-legged on the crystal floor, and buried her beautiful face in her knees. Both of them fell into silence, and then tears fell from Shuanger's big eyes one by one. At first, they fell one by one, but then tears just poured out. Yang Dingtian was completely turned to wood. Naga can cry? This is the most powerful race in the world, and she can still cry? It's really unbelievable. Since the complete transformation, the Naga Shuang had always been cold and ruthless. She was strong and utilitarian, and had never shown any weakness. Crying was also something that Naga had never done. Yang Dingtian stood on the side, not knowing how to comfort her. "I know about Shimin Ningning," Shuanger suddenly said. "She is also a Naga, and her mother is Queen Medusa." Yang Dingtian did not say anything. Naga Shuang said, "What's more, Shimin Ningning only gives and doesn't take anything from you. She's gentle and wise. I can't be compared to her." Yang Dingtian did not confirm or deny his words. Naga Shuang said, "So, I'm not the only one who can give you the body of a demigod. She can too." Yang Dingtian was stunned. Wasn't Shimin Ningning a descendant of Naga? He would never be able to break through to become a demigod. No, Shimin Ningning shouldn't be a Naga of the later generation. Naga Shuang replied, "Of course. She was born from a Naga, while I was born from a sea serpent or a mermaid, just like most demigods from Naga. So I should be different from her. But she is not the Naga of the future." Yang Dingtian said, "Her cultivation is far inferior to yours." Naga Shuang said, "That's because a large part of her energy comes from her mother. Her mother, on the other hand, is extremely powerful, so her energy is weak. One day, once her mother decides to inherit all the energy to her, she will instantly become powerful." Yang Dingtian was stunned. Not only did Nagas share energy with their partners, but they also shared energy with their offspring? Naga Shuang nodded and said, "That's right. So in the old Naga Empire, almost no Naga would reproduce. They are always ready to reproduce, but they won't really reproduce because they are immortal." Then, the two of them fell into silence again. Naga Shuang spoke again. "I know that you are very disappointed and angry with me, because of my greed for energy, because of the death of the Sea Serpent Queen, because I let go of the Demon King, and so on." Yang Dingtian didn't deny her words. Naga Shuang said, "I don't want to explain anything. You have always wanted to leave and return to the human countries, so you imprisoned me in this ruined space. Now you can do that. You can go." Yang Dingtian was stunned. Naga Shuang said, "Go back to the human countries and find the soul-leaving temple. You can mate with Shimin Ningning and have a demigod body. She is different from me. She doesn't need to cultivate. Once the Medusa decides to let her inherit everything, she will instantly have all the energy of the Medusa and become the new queen of the Medusa. In short, she will be much stronger than me." Yang Dingtian opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but in the end, he didn't say anything. He got up and prepared to leave. "What, you don't even want to explain to me now?" Naga Shuang said. Yang Dingtian took a deep breath and said, "I have already defeated the Demon King. I don't want to break through to the demigod realm at all. I am no longer interested in becoming stronger." Naga Shuang said, "Then tell me, what are you going to do next?" Yang Dingtian said, Destroy the ghost Emperor Wentian of the Underworld Empire. Then find the soul-leaving temple and rescue Dongfang Bingling. Finally, find the truth of the great nirvana of the world and stop the destruction of the world. All of these matters were extremely important. However, Yang Dingtian said it in a very calm tone. Then, Yang Dingtian said seriously, "These things don't necessarily need to break through to the demigod realm, or even fight." Naga Shuang looked at Yang Dingtian for a long time and said, "Husband, you are very smart and wise. However, because you are too kind, you don't have enough understanding of the cruelty of the world. So you seem childish." Yang Dingtian listened to her calmly and didn't refute. Naga Shuang said, "Of course, this is the most important reason why you have succeeded so far. It is also the reason why you are great. I have no right to deny this, but husband, please believe me. All of this won't end so easily." Yang Dingtian said, "What do you mean by not ending so easily?" Naga Shuang said, "Reincarnation, destruction, war." Yang Dingtian said, "Please explain in detail." Naga Shuang said, "After the great nirvana of the martial arts civilization, there will be an apocalyptic war every 200 years, and hundreds of millions of people will die. It's as if the whole world has been reshuffled, and then restarted again. And this time, because of your existence, the apocalyptic war almost ended before it even started. The human countries weren't damaged at all. Therefore, the mastermind behind the evil ways won't give up so easily." Yang Dingtian listened very carefully. One of his strengths was that he was humble and could listen to what others said. Naga Shuang continued, "Husband, who is the mastermind behind the evil ways?" Yang Dingtian said, "The soul-departing palace, Queen Medusa." "Yes, it's the soul-departing palace," Naga Shuang said. "From Wentian to Shimen Wuya, they were all controlled by the soul-departing palace. Now they are all dead, and the great nirvana of the reincarnation that happens every 200 years hasn't happened. Do you think the soul-departing palace will give up so easily?" Yang Dingtian said, "That makes sense. Continue." Naga Shuang said, "I don't want to say bad things about Shimen Ningning, but why did Shimen Ningning appear in Cloud Sky City in the first place? Why did she appear as Shimen Wuya's adopted daughter?" After Shimen Wuya's identity was revealed, Yang Dingtian naturally knew that Shimen Ningning's role was not simple. However, he didn't want to think about it or touch on it. Naga Shuang said, "Husband, Shimen Ningning is the highest leader of the evil ways in the human countries. Her status surpasses that of the Demon King, because she is the daughter of Queen Medusa. She directly represents the will of the soul-departing palace." When these words came out, Yang Dingtian's heart trembled. Naga Shuang directly told the biggest truth. He never wanted to think about this, but he knew that Shuanger was right. Naga Shuang continued, "In this world, probably only Shimen Wuya vaguely knows Shimen Ningning's identity. Even the Demon King and the Devil Queen don't know, let alone Wu Yuming and the others. You should be very curious why Shimen Ningning fell in love with you at first sight, because this is destined. She should have told you that she will resist and dislike any man she meets. But when she meets you, she will feel extremely comfortable and moved. She is willing to give you everything, but she can't really make love with you." "That's right," Shimen Ningning said this. At that time, Yang Dingtian really found it very strange why Shimen Ningning would be so good to him, and for no reason at all. Naga Shuang said, "Originally, after the Demon King was defeated, you would face the final enemy, Shimen Ningning. But, after all, she is a spiritual type Naga. Once she is moved, she doesn't care about anything, unlike our martial Naga, who are so greedy and utilitarian." At this point, Naga Shuang's tone was completely self-deprecating. Then Naga Shuang said, "At that time, in order to help you, she was even willing to give you the deep-sea mystic poison, which had already challenged Queen Medusa's first bottom line. Then in the battle with Qin Xiaobai, she directly transformed and started a massacre. This completely broke Medusa's bottom line. So before her mission was over, she was summoned back to the soul-leaving palace and imprisoned. That's because she's too fearless in the face of love. Based on her standpoint, there will be a day when she'll become your enemy and become the final mastermind of the evil Tao. But she can't do it. She is not like me, who will betray her spirit and love. At this point Shuang Er's tone was even more self-deprecating. Yang Dingtian finally understood completely. In fact, if he was willing to think about it, he could think of these things. But he just didn't want to touch it. Shimin Ningning was perfect in his heart, and he didn't want anything to stain her. Now, under Naga Shuang's analysis, the truth was revealed. Shimin Ningning was the highest leader of the evil ways in the human countries, and the direct leader of the Demon King. However, she was still pure, flawless. Yang Dingtian's heart softened, and he was very happy. Because Shimin Ningning was still flawless. She was originally going to be the ultimate character in this big show. But she didn't want to betray her love, so she retired early, and was imprisoned in a space that no one knew about. Suddenly Yang Dingtian said, Shuang, there are many things that I haven't told you, but you know all of them. You can read minds. But you are a martial Naga, not a spiritual type Naga. Naga Shuang turned her face to the side and said, Because you are my lover, I can read your heart. We Naga are always loyal to love, not only because we share energy, but also because it has nothing to do with love. Okay, you can go. Go find Shimin Ningning, Naga Shuang cried. Chapter 1153. When Naga Shuang was with Yang Dingtian, she could read his mind. Then, she had always been aware of Yang Dingtian's disappointment and resentment towards her. No wonder her attitude became so stubborn and cold. She seemed to always want to prove herself with actions, but her attitude was more arrogant. For example, when she and Yang Dingtian left the ruins and went to the human countries, she already knew Yang Dingtian's resentment towards her. Her approach was cold and aloof, but she still went to the human countries to help Yang Dingtian destroy the Demon King. It was as if she was saying, I will do anything for you, but I will never bow my head and show weakness. She knew in her heart that Yang Dingtian blamed her for not combining with him and letting Yang Dingtian have the body of a demigod. That way, he would be invincible against the Demon King. She also did not explain. Perhaps in Naga's eyes, explaining was a very weak and incompetent behavior. In the end, she explained that she would only combine with him after breaking through to the demigod level. Otherwise, it was very likely that she would never be able to break through to the demigod level. She had maintained this unfeeling attitude all the way until Yang Dingtian saved her when she was in mortal danger. She didn't leave and didn't care. Her unyielding attitude was too weak. Yang Dingtian did not know what to say, but suddenly said, You have the evil spirit of the origin in your body. Why were you still hurt by the big explosion in the ruins? I was not hurt, I was killed, Naga Shuang said. If you did not save me, I would have died. Yang Dingtian. But second and third class evil spirits are immortal. Even if their heads are cut off, they can grow back. You have nothing to say. You don't have to change the topic like this, Naga Shuang said. Then she said, Husband, there is no energy in this world that is completely indestructible. The reason why the evil spirit of the origin is immortal is that even if its head is cut off, it can grow back. Moreover, it always protects the sea of qi, xian veins, heart and brain. That was because of its special properties. In the end, the bodies of all living creatures in this world were made up of energy and matter. When an attack destroys a part of the body, it doesn't mean that the part completely disappears. Instead, it transforms into another form. Husband, do you understand? Yang Dingtian nodded. Yes, Naga Shuang said. The primordial evil spirit's special energy can quickly reconstruct these destroyed substances and restore them to their original state. Furthermore, the foundation of all this was that the evil spirit of the primordial evil spirit could always maintain the foundation of its life form and not be destroyed. Moreover, when a certain part of the body is damaged, it will devour the shattered matter and the destroyed energy, and then reverse and recombine from the inside. Yang Dingtian nodded. These words were very complicated, but he could understand them. In fact, there was also a related quantum theory on Earth. That is, using a special energy to directly decompose an item. Then, after teleporting to a certain distance, it would be reassembled and returned to its original state. Moreover, the Earth plane had already carried out related experiments, even though the matter was only a particle. Naga Shuang said, however, the energy that the primordial evil spirit can withstand is also limited. Of course, our normal battle is far from its limit. Therefore, no matter how many times people with evil spirit energy are killed, they will be intact and restored to their original state. But when the energy is large enough, far beyond the range that the primordial evil spirit can withstand, then it will not be able to provide absolute protection. So, why can the energy in the abyss border disintegrate and destroy evil spirits? That was because its energy was already at its peak. And the energy generated by the explosion in the ruins of the Naga Empire just now was enough to destroy the entire human kingdom several times. This level of energy is far beyond the range that the primordial evil spirit can withstand, so it can't protect my life. Yang Dingtian nodded. Understood. Naga Shuang continued. Also, you should know about the dark matter. It is the dark matter that surrounded the ancient sea serpent empire. It also seems to be indestructible. But now the outer edge of the dark matter has been expanding and disintegrating. Do you know why? Yang Dingtian. Because the energy generated by the explosion in the ruins of the Naga Empire was swallowed and couldn't withstand it, so it directly expanded and disintegrated. Yes. Naga Shuang said. Husband, in fact, this dark matter has been swallowing the underwater world on the surface. It looks very evil and terrifying, but in fact, it has been protecting the only remaining living continent. Although the ruins of the old Naga Empire and the human kingdom are very far away, this explosion was enough to destroy the entire human kingdom. And in the past 10,000 years, the ruins have exploded countless times. It is the endless dark matter that protects the human kingdom and acts as a buffer between the ruins and the human kingdom. Yang Dingtian was stunned when he heard this. The dark matter that was evil and terrifying in his eyes actually protected the entire human kingdom. Naga Shuang said, so this dark matter is produced by the Chaos World's self-protection mechanism. It looks bad, but it is not necessarily bad. The second half of this sentence was already filled with personal feelings. Taking a deep breath, Naga Shuang said, husband, I know that the moment I swallowed the primordial evil spirit and flew away, leaving you to the Demon King, I can no longer take it back. No matter what I do, I can't repair the gap between us. The feelings between a man and a woman are very strong, and even life and death can't be separated. But it is also very fragile. Even a small crack will completely tear the two of us apart. Even if you are willing to forgive, you can't really repair it. This is not a matter of whether you are generous or not. At this point, Naga Shuang's eyes turned red again. You are right. Although you have more than one wife, just based on the feelings between you and me, you have never betrayed or hurt. The one who betrayed and hurt is me. I originally didn't want to explain, and it is useless to explain. But I still want to say that when I swallowed the primordial evil spirit and flew away, I really didn't want to leave you to the Demon King to be possessed. My will and reason were really destroyed in an instant, and I completely forgot myself. You can say that my actions are unrighteous at the sight of profit, blinded by greed. But it is really not a betrayal of feelings. Then, wiping away the tears at the corner of her eyes, Naga Shuang said, also, I didn't allow you to kill the Demon King, because I really wanted you to swallow his energy, even if I couldn't find a way to do so. But I really didn't want to hurt you. I was really blinded by greed. Our martial Naga is just the shameless, greedy. Yang Dingtian didn't know how to answer. Naga Shuang turned her face to the side and said, I know that when something has happened, it is useless to explain. I said that even if you want to forgive, you can't repair the gap between us. So I didn't intend to explain before, because that would only make me weak. But I thought that if I explained, even if it couldn't mend the gap, it would at least make you feel better, so that you wouldn't be so disappointed in human nature. I once said that I don't owe you anything, and that it is my freedom to make any decision. Naga's beautiful eyes fell into memories. Indeed, I don't owe you anything, and on the contrary, I have saved your life many times. But for a very, very long time, you are my world, my everything. Naga Shuang's voice came to an abrupt stop before she finished speaking. As a powerful Naga, She would rather die than say these words, because it went against her pride and would make her seem weak. But now, Yang Dingtian had saved her life once again. And most importantly, the ruins of the old Naga Empire had exploded, and now there was less than a third of the ruins left. She would probably never be able to break through to the demigod realm. She didn't want to explain, and just immersed herself in breaking through to the demigod realm. Then she would directly grab Yang Dingtian and marry him whether he agreed or not. In this way, Yang Dingtian would have a demigod body, and they would share energy and life. In that case, the so-called contradictions and cracks would probably vanish into thin air. Her creed was to not explain, and just do as she pleased. But now, she would probably never be able to break through to the demigod realm. Then she would never be able to do what she wanted to do. Okay, husband, you can go. I can't give you a demigod body, Naga Shuang said. But Shiman Ningning can. And she has always been pure to you. She is not blinded by greed like me, and even tore apart our relationship. Yang Dingtian opened his mouth to say something. Naga Shuang said, "You don't need to say anything. I know what you want to say. You want to say that you don't need a demigod body. Trust me, you definitely need it. Alright, you can go back now." After a moment of silence, Yang Dingtian asked, "What about you?" Naga Shuang said, "I'll stay here. Although I can't break through to the demigod realm, I can't waste the energy here." Yang Dingtian said, "Okay, I'll go back first. I'll pick you up later." Naga Shuang said, "Didn't you want to exile me here so that I won't harm the human countries?" Yang Dingtian said, "If the soul-leaving temple doesn't give up, then our war isn't over yet, and we still need you, the most powerful Naga." Naga Shuang said, "You're quite straightforward." Yang Dingtian said, "It's better to make it clear. You're right. Although your explanation can't completely heal the crack, at least it makes me feel a lot better. Seeing the strange you from before really scared me." Then Yang Dingtian asked, "If the soul-leaving temple doesn't give up, which direction do you think they will try to break through?" Naga Shuang said, "In this world, which force do you think can destroy the human countries, and has something to do with the Demon King?" Yang Dingtian was stunned for a moment, and then he thought of an answer. Chapter 1154. At present in the chaotic world, what other forces were known to be able to destroy the human countries? There should be none. The Ghost Emperor Wentian of the Netherworld Kingdom was already considered good enough to be able to protect himself. There should only be one force, and that was New Naga. In New Naga, there were more than 1,000,000 future Naga, although these were not real Naga, and they would never reach the demigod realm. But, at least they were infinitely close to the demigod realm. Whether it was Buikao or Lan Qi, the cultivation of these future Naga should be comparable to the Demon King after fusion. Moreover, New Naga had been in existence for more than 10,000 years. Other than the spiritual type, the first-generation Naga inside had reached the limit of martial strength for a long time. In other words, the future Naga, who were comparable to the Demon King in cultivation, might be a very large number. Just one Demon King alone was enough to bring calamity to the human nations. Then if many future Naga, who were close to the demigod realm, poured into the human countries, what would the consequences be? It would only be worse than the Demon King's invasion. It was guaranteed that no one in the entire human countries would survive. One had to know that a few years ago, the descendants of the Sea Serpent clan, Naga, had once launched a rebellion. The purpose was to obtain the greater space technique, break out of the confinement space of New Naga, and sweep the entire world. Of course, that rebellion failed. However, those Sea Serpent Naga descendants of New Naga, if they wanted to invade the human countries, needed the greater space technique. And it was impossible for them to study the greater space technique at the moment. The contents of the scripture pavilion were completely sealed. Their spiritual cultivation was not enough, so they could not open it. Therefore, it was impossible for them to use the greater space technique with their own ability. Then, was it possible for the Soul-Leaving Palace to give the greater space technique to New Naga? First of all, did Soul-Leaving Palace's Medusa know the greater space technique? Obviously, the possibility of her knowing was very high. because when Shiwu Piaoyan and the Naga Empire were studying space techniques together, Queen Medusa was definitely the main force of the research. Therefore, the probability of her knowing the greater spatial technique was very high. If Medusa had the greater space spell, would she be able to send it to New Naga? This seemed to have exceeded Yang Dingtian's expectations. However, he was a little curious. If she could do this, why didn't she do it earlier? Why did she have to wait until the Demon King was completely defeated? As a result, Yang Dingtian was filled with absolute unease. He had been imprisoned by the Naga Shuang for several months. He wondered if anything had happened to the human nations during this time. Yang Dingtian's heart was burning with anxiety. Shuang, I have to go back immediately. You stay here and devour the energy, Yang Dingtian said. I'll come back for you. Yes, Naga Shuang replied, indicating that she had heard him. Yang Dingtian summoned his primal Chaos Emperor Grade Soul Sword and flew away from the ruins of the old Naga Empire at lightning speed. After flying for an unknown distance and passing through two tightly sealed spaces, Yang Dingtian returned to the ruins of the ancient Sea Serpent Empire's capital city after 7 days and 7 nights. Yang Dingtian immediately saw Queen Poisa in the palace's main hall. Moreover, her expression was filled with unease and frustration. When she saw Yang Dingtian, Poisa was overjoyed. She rushed over and hugged Yang Dingtian. Little Yang Dingtian, are you all right? Yang Dingtian replied, Of course I'm fine. What's wrong? Poisa said, When I saw that you hadn't returned for a long time, I knew that you must have been trapped by the Naga, so I waited here for you. Of course, I didn't have to worry too much about your safety, because Shuang wouldn't hurt you. What I was worried about was Hai Xian. She had learned a very strange cultivation technique that could restore a shattered crystal ball to its original state. Then, she opened an energy passage and traveled to the ruins of the old Naga Empire. Yang Dingtian looked at the crystal ball fragments in Hai Xian's hand and said, She asked you to open an energy passage and then shattered the crystal ball? Yes, Poisa said. Although her cultivation wasn't high, I felt very uneasy. I felt that she would bring a great disaster. Yang Dingtian said. But I didn't find any trace of her in the ruins of the old Naga Empire. Shuang didn't find any trace of her either. What? The venomous queen was instantly surprised and said, She clearly passed through. Then where exactly did she go? Then Queen Poisa suddenly said, That's right, little Tian. We tried Hai Xian at that time, and sealed all her Xian meridians in Qi Si. Then, we imprisoned her in an energy prison. In the end, the soul-leaving palace released her, and gave her a very strange cultivation technique. Soul-leaving palace? Yang Dingtian's heart trembled. In this way, the entire sequence of events became clear. After the Demon King was completely defeated, the soul-leaving palace didn't give up. They still wanted to open the cycle of destruction once every 200 years. Evil ways had been completely destroyed. It had no place to borrow power, so it chose New Naga. And Medusa wouldn't do it herself. She would choose a puppet, so she chose Queen Hai Xian? Then, didn't it mean that the soul-leaving palace let Queen Hai Xian bring the greater space technique to New Naga? However, Queen Hai Xian didn't have the void-splitting fire. She couldn't pass through the Dark Realm and enter New Naga. Moreover, why did the soul-leaving palace let Hai Xian go to the ruins of the old Naga Empire? There was no way to New Naga here. Then Yang Dingtian was suddenly shocked. One was New Naga, and the other was the ruins of the old Naga Empire. Was there a connection between the two? Was there a passage? In other words, Queen Hai Xian could go to New Naga through the ruins of the old Naga Empire. If that was the case, the consequences were too terrifying. That meant that the new Naga of the sea snake descendants had already obtained the greater space technique. That meant that the invasion was about to arrive. In an instant, Yang Dingtian's heart suddenly jumped. God bless that the conservative and greedy Naga of the sea snake descendants hadn't invaded the human countries yet. If they had already invaded, then no one could change the outcome of their destruction. Immediately, Yang Dingtian immediately hugged Poisa. He didn't even fly by himself. Instead, he stepped on the Emperor Grade Soul Sword and shuttled back and forth like lightning. He used the fastest speed to return to the human countries. He wanted to confirm if the Naga of the future had invaded. After a few days and nights of rapid shuttling at the bottom of the sea, Yang Dingtian suddenly rushed out of the sea surface. Then, he still stepped on the soul sword and used the fastest speed to fly back to Cloud Sky City. Luckily, when Yang Dingtian saw the first city in the human countries, it was still peaceful. It wasn't destroyed, nor was it turned into ruins. He immediately let out a long sigh of relief. His entire body was about to collapse. Soon, Yang Dingtian and Poisa landed in Cloud Sky City. Everything was safe and sound, and Yin Yin and the others, all of their worries and uneasiness were completely put down. The invasion of the Naga of the future had not yet begun. Yang Dingtian's first reaction was to immediately go to the Dark Realm to investigate. He wanted to see if the Naga army of the future generations had come out of New Naga. But soon, he dispelled this idea because it was meaningless. His second reaction was to think of a way to transfer the entire Council of Light to the Little Western Paradise, or Tear Open Space. But again he gave up again. It was still meaningless because if the worst had happened, it meant that the Naga of the future generations had already obtained the spatial technique and could easily enter the Tear Open Space and the Little Western Paradise. Finally, Yang Dingtian thought that the last hiding place of the Council of Light was the Empire of Darkness. That's right, it was the Empire of Darkness that the Demon King Wintian used to belong to, the Empire of Darkness that was protected by countless dark matter. At this time, Yang Dingtian had 2 primeval Naga's eye gems in his hand. At that time, his soul sword shattered the Devil Queen's magic wand, and the primeval Naga's eye gems on it also fell into Yang Dingtian's hands. Yang Dingtian began to think about whether it was feasible to transfer the Council of Light to the Empire of Darkness. It should be feasible. At least the Empire of Darkness was the safest place so far. Then, how many people could the entire Empire of Darkness accommodate? The Empire of Darkness was very large and had countless giant castles. Each giant castle was equivalent to a large city. Moreover, it was a 3-dimensional space with a diameter of more than tens of thousands of miles. But the most important question now was, how many humans should be transferred into the Empire of Darkness? How long could these countless humans survive in the Empire of Darkness? Without further ado, Yang Dingtian immediately called for a high-level meeting of the Council of Light. After all the senior members heard the news, they were instantly stunned. Everything was not over yet. Was the so-called soul-leaving temple determined to destroy the human countries? Why were they not willing to give up? Time was extremely tight. Yang Dingtian could not delay for even an hour. He had to be fast. At the fastest, there was no need to discuss. At this time, it was time to make a decision. Yang Dingtian directly ordered, "Wu Yu, immediately enter the Little Western Paradise and tell the news of the new Naga's imminent invasion to Demon's Wrath 2, Speaker Neru, and High Priest Fire Dance. Tell her that we will allow the demon foxes within 1,000,000 to enter the Empire of Darkness to hide." "Yes," Wu Yu said, and then immediately flew out of Cloud Sky City and headed for the Little Western Paradise. Yang Dingtian then ordered, "From now on, the senior members of the Council of Light immediately start preparing for a big retreat. Violet has the eye gem of the primeval Naga, so she can enter the Empire of Darkness. Vulture can control all the Legion of Doom in the Empire of Darkness. The 2 of you enter the Empire of Darkness first to confirm your safety. Immediately transfer the most important people and things into the Empire of Darkness. How many people can be transferred in the end? Do your best and leave it to fate." Yes, Violets and Vulture immediately flew out of Cloud Sky City and headed for the Empire of Darkness. Yang Dingtian said, "I will immediately go to New Naga to confirm if they have obtained the greater space technique, and if the invasion will happen. If possible, I will try my best to stop everything from happening in New Naga. As for the final result, I hope that God will bless me." After saying that, Yang Dingtian flew out of Cloud Sky City and headed for the Dark Realm, heading for New Naga. Chapter 1155. Next, Yang Dingtian used his fastest speed to enter the first dark domain, the second dark domain, and the third dark domain. In the third dark domain, he once again saw the incomparably familiar devouring fog. Using the spatial rending flame to purify the surrounding space, Yang Dingtian traveled all the way to the bottom of the third dark domain. This was already a boundless void, and behind him was the vast universe of stars. Yang Dingtian continued to fly. In the center of the third dark domain, he once again saw the familiar huge whirlpool. This whirlpool was the entrance to New Naga. Last time, Yang Dingtian directly fainted after entering New Naga through the whirlpool. This time, Yang Dingtian hoped that he could remain conscious when entering. He held his breath, and then rushed into the huge whirlpool. In an instant he lost all his consciousness. However, the time he fainted this time was very short. After entering New Naga, Yang Dingtian immediately woke up in almost a moment. He found himself floating in the middle of a boundless sea. He was once again in New Naga. Only New Naga had such a beautiful fairy-like scenery. Yang Dingtian noticed that this sea was something he had never been to before. He didn't know if it was the territory of the sea serpents or the mere people. Immediately, Yang Dingtian entered stealth mode and flew high into the sky. After flying for less than an hour, Yang Dingtian was able to see the densely packed pyramids on the boundless grassland. There were also many later generations of Naga people with human faces and snake bodies. This was the territory of the sea serpents. The last time Yang Dingtian entered New Naga through the whirlpool, he was saved by Queen Lan Qi. It was in the territory of the imperial palace. Now, he was actually in the territory of the sea serpents. Both times, he entered through the huge whirlpool, but the places he arrived at were completely different. Next, Yang Dingtian fell into hesitation. Should he look for Wentian first or Queen Lan Qi first? If he went to look for Wentian first, it was very likely that he would be walking right into a trap. If he were to look for Queen Lan Qi, she might not even know what had happened. Yang Dingtian's first mission in New Naga was to confirm if New Naga had obtained the greater space technique. Thus, Yang Dingtian continued to conceal himself and sneaked into the old capital of the New Naga settlement of the sea serpents. Of course, this was a very dangerous action. In the old capital, there were probably countless people in the New Naga whose cultivation surpassed Yang Dingtian's. Yang Dingtian kept going deeper and deeper. This old capital was extremely huge. Its perimeter had already exceeded a few hundred miles. The pyramid seemed to be the only building left. On Queen Lan Qi's side, there were many beautiful buildings, such as the imperial palace, pavilions, and so on. On the other hand, there were countless pyramids in the old capital. The pyramids were completely the symbol of the ancient Naga Empire. This meant that the later generations of the sea serpents had completely walked the path of the demigod Naga. It wasn't an easy task to find Wentian in this huge old capital. After a few hours, Yang Dingtian still couldn't find Wentian's figure. Finally, Yang Dingtian arrived at the center of the old capital. Here there was the largest pyramid. Moreover, there were densely packed Naga guards, who were arranged on every step like nails. This should be the pyramid of the sea serpents Naga tribe. In the entire old capital, there wasn't a bigger pyramid than this one. In that case, sneaking into this pyramid should be an extremely dangerous thing to do. Although Yang Dingtian's concealment technique could only be seen by the undead. Once one entered the pyramid, many powerful spiritual type Naga would clearly sense the shrinking of space. Therefore, they would be able to sense that something was wrong. Moreover, if one was trapped in the pyramid, it would be very difficult to escape. Just when Yang Dingtian was hesitating whether to enter the pyramid of the sea serpent's chief, a Naga elder suddenly appeared at the top of the steps. The king has decreed that the human Wentian and the serpent Hai-Exan are to have an audience with the king. When these words were spoken, Yang Dingtian's heart turned cold. Hai-Exan had indeed entered the New Naga. In that case, half of the bad news had already been confirmed. After this Naga elder finished his announcement, dozens of Naga warriors flew towards a pyramid not far away. They were most likely going to bring Wentian and Hai-Exan. These dozens of Naga warriors were the first generation of Naga. Their cultivation had already reached the limit of their talent. Every one of them was much stronger than Yang Dingtian. Indeed, after a short few minutes, the familiar Queen Hyexayan and the human Wentian were brought over by dozens of Naga warriors. Looking at Queen Hyexayan, who was filled with excitement and anticipation, as well as some uneasiness, Yang Dingtian's heart was unprecedentedly complicated. Queen Hyexayan was originally destined to die. However, because the Sea Serpent Empress had died for him, Yang Dingtian felt that he owed her. Therefore, he spared Hyexayan's life and sentenced her to life imprisonment. However, who would have thought that the ambitious Queen Hyexayan would not only not be grateful, but also bring about a huge calamity to the human countries? Of course, if one were to ask whether Yang Dingtian regretted pardoning Hyexayan's death sentence, Yang Dingtian might not regret it because Hyexayan's life was exchanged for by her mother's sacrifice. Moreover, even if Yang Dingtian had executed Hyexayan, the soul-leaving palace would still search for a second puppet. The source of this calamity was the soul-leaving palace. Of course, Queen Hyexayan had also wasted her only chance to live. If Yang Dingtian and the human countries could survive this calamity, then Hyexayan would definitely die. She would no longer have the chance to be pardoned. At this moment, Yang Dingtian even had an impulse to immediately kill Hyexayan. Could he do it? He could probably do it. If he directly activated the Primal Chaos Emperor Grade Soul Sword, he could instantly kill Hyexayan. Before the Naga warriors could react, the success rate would be about 70 to 80%. However, if he did that, Yang Dingtian would be exposed and the possibility of him escaping would be very small. Therefore, it was not worth it to sacrifice himself to kill Hyexayan. At this moment, Yang Dingtian was hiding at the side while Hyexayan and Wentian were escorted by dozens of Naga warriors. They flew past them and entered the great hall of the pyramid. "Sir Wentian, why did the king summon me?" Queen Hyexayan was filled with nervousness and excitement. "Probably to reward you for offering the greater space technique," Wentian replied. Yang Dingtian's heart turned cold. That's right, it was indeed the greater space technique. This matter had already happened. It had already been confirmed. Yang Dingtian even felt a little dizzy. The worst thing had indeed happened. What should he do next? Follow them into the great hall and destroy it? That was impossible. Almost everyone here had a cultivation higher than Yang Dingtian. In this great hall, almost every high-level Naga had a cultivation equivalent to the Demon King. Entering the great hall was simply courting death. If he wanted to prevent the calamity from happening, he had to find the enemy of the sea snakes, Queen Lan Qi. Instantly, Yang Dingtian sucked in a breath of air and watched as Wentian and Hyexayan entered the great hall. After that, he turned invisible and silently flew away. Naga Hyexayan pays her respects to King Boyi. Hyexayan knelt down. Boyi looked at Hyexayan for a long time before saying, "You are the Naga preparatory producer of the sea snakes 10,000 years ago?" This name was really unpleasant to hear. Naga preparatory producer. Yes. Hyexayan bowed. Boyi continued. "Although you didn't give birth to Naga, you have made a great contribution. You are the envoy of Queen Medusa. Therefore, I will reward you greatly." "Many thanks, my king," Hyexayan said. Boyi's attitude towards Hyexayan was much better than Wentian's. From his point of view, Wentian was just a lowly human. Although Hyexayan was only from the sea snakes, she was still the envoy of Queen Medusa. Boyi said, "After a few days and nights of work by dozens of elders, the half-finished Greater Space Technique scroll that you brought has been completely completed. The energy runes inside have all been filled up. I have studied it thoroughly and completely comprehended it." Hyexayan said, "Congratulations, my king." Boyi said, "However, my Greater Space Technique still lacks one thing, and that is the Darkness Mystic Flame." Hyexayan said, "My king, I know how the Darkness Mystic Flame is formed. As long as we use the Heaven and Earth Mystic Flame to burn the Darkness Crystal, when the two perish together, a new Mystic Flame will be born. It will be the Darkness Mystic Flame." Boyi said, "I know that our Naga doesn't care about the Heaven and Earth Mystic Flame. Although new Naga can't nurture the Heaven and Earth Mystic Flame, with our power, we can easily create it. However, we don't have the darkness crystal. Hai Xian said, "What a coincidence. As the queen of the Serpent Men Empire, the celestial Red Sea is within my territory. It is rich in darkness crystals. I happen to have the darkness crystal on me, and it is enough for my king to create the darkness mystic flame." Boyi said, "Good, then are you willing to give the darkness crystal to me? In exchange, I can reach the peak of the sea snakes in a short period of time." Queen Hai Xian bowed and said, "I'm willing to give the darkness crystal to my king without paying any price." "Oh, why?" Boyi asked. Hai Xian said, "Because I want revenge. Yang Dingtian from the human countries brought destruction to my Serpentman Empire. I want an eye for an eye." Boyi Ming smiled and said, "You will get what you want. I will even follow our original agreement and give your Sea Serpent tribe a huge ocean to rebuild the Sea Serpent Empire for you. You will be the new queen of the Sea Serpent Empire." Hai Xian bowed and said, "Thank you, Your Majesty." Then, she took out an energy box. After opening it, a fingernail-sized darkness crystal floated in the middle. She knelt down and offered the darkness crystal to Boyi. Boyi took it and looked at the fingernail-sized darkness crystal. He took a deep breath and felt the terrifying energy in the darkness crystal. Such shocking energy, although it was only a small piece, it was like a black hole. In fact, this was the largest piece of darkness crystal Queen Hai Xian could take out. Even Yang Dingtian had never seen such a large darkness crystal. Boyi smiled and said, "I don't joke. I said that I will give you the peak of the sea serpent race's energy, and I will do it. As for destroying the entire human countries for revenge, just wait. Don't worry. In a few days, we can create a mystic fire that is not inferior to the heaven and earth level." "Yes, Your Majesty," Hai Xian bowed and said. After leaving the old capital, Yang Dingtian flew to Queen Lan Qi's palace as fast as he could. After a few hours, Yang Dingtian arrived above the palace of New Naga. The palace was still the same palace, and it was still magnificent. Even the surrounding scenery had not changed. It was still beautiful, but the entire palace was desolate. Although Bu Yikao's rebellion failed in the end, countless Naga warriors loyal to Queen Lan Qi had died in the palace. In addition, many descendants of Naga were actually against Queen Lan Qi's position. Therefore, after the war, some Naga warriors left one after another. Even the descendants of Queen Lan Qi's clan, the descendants of Naga, were not willing to stand by Queen Lan Qi's side. It could be said that except for a few wise men and Queen Lan Qi's most loyal followers, none of the Naga warriors had a breakthrough in their spiritual energy. All the other Nagas no longer held any hope for a breakthrough in their spiritual energy. They all wanted to break through the prison of the new Naga Empire and sweep through the entire world to obtain new breakthroughs and new energy. Therefore, it could be said that Queen Lan Qi was fighting against the entire new Naga. Although she was still the queen, she was already a loner. Yang Dingtian landed in the palace and began to look for Queen Lan Qi. Walking in the palace, Yang Dingtian felt that it was really desolate. Most of the houses in the palace were empty. There were no Naga warriors standing guard in most places. Moreover, there were very few maids shuttling back and forth. Compared to Yang Dingtian last time, the Naga in the palace had decreased by at least 80%. He couldn't find Queen Lan Qi in her bedroom. Yang Dingtian went to the dining hall and still didn't see Lan Qi. Then she should be in the library. Queen Lan Qi had been in the library most of the time. In the end, after Yang Dingtian entered the library, he still couldn't find Lan Qi. This was really strange. Where would Queen Lan Qi go? Suddenly his heart skipped a beat. She couldn't be in the room he had stayed in before, right? Thus, Yang Dingtian walked toward the palace where he had stayed as a guest. Sure enough, Queen Lan Qi was here. She was sitting alone at a table with a chess game in front of her. She, who was bored and lonely to the extreme, was playing chess with herself. Yang Dingtian closed the door. Queen Lan Qi was slightly stunned and raised her head. Then, she continued to look down at the chess game, not even caring that the door had suddenly closed. After closing the door, Yang Dingtian removed his invisible state and appeared in front of Queen Lan Qi. Queen Lan Qi was instantly stunned. She looked at Yang Dingtian in disbelief. Chapter 1156. What throwing herself into his arms? What hugging each other and saying in pain? Am I dreaming? None of this could have happened. Queen Lanqi just widened her eyes and looked at Yang Dingtian. Really, Yang Dingtian? Of course it's true. Lanqi said. Then hurry up. It's boring to play chess with myself every day. Let's play a game. Afterward, Yang Dingtian sat across from him and finished this game of chess that wasn't finished yet. Are you done with your matters in the human world? You actually have time to visit me? Lanqi asked. Yang Dingtian. The matters in the human world are done. Evil ways have been completely eliminated. Lanqi said. That's good. Thank you for coming to see me. I'm really bored to the extreme. Yang Dingtian. I really wanted to come to New Naga for a vacation and see you, but in fact, I have something important to do. Lanqi. What is it? Yang Dingtian. Back then, all the Naga in the ancient Naga Empire chose to destroy themselves and used their bodies and energy to construct this new Naga's imprisonment space. However, one Naga escaped. You know that? Queen Lanqi nodded, indicating that she knew about this. Yang Dingtian. The one who escaped was Queen Medusa. After destroying the Sea Serpent Empire, she went to destroy the Mermaid Empire. But for some reason, she didn't destroy the Mermaid Empire. She also defected to the Naga Empire and built the Soul-Leaving Temple. Queen Lanqi's speed of placing her pieces suddenly slowed down as she listened carefully to Yang Dingtian's words. Yang Dingtian continued. The Soul-Leaving Temple is the mastermind behind the evil ways that launched the world-ending war. Every 200 years, they will reincarnate and kill most of the people in the human world. But this time, perhaps because of me, the Armageddon War ended before it even started. The Legion of Doom has been completely annihilated, and the human kingdoms have suffered minimal losses. The evil ways have also been completely annihilated, and the Soul-Leaving Temple has also lost its pawn. Queen Lanqi nodded, indicating for Yang Dingtian to continue. Yang Dingtian said, So the divorce section found a new puppet. She was the Naga High Excion. The Soul-Leaving Palace sent her to the new Naga Empire and taught the Greater Space spell to the new Naga descendants. At this time, the Sea Snake Patriarch Bo Yiming has already learned the Greater Space spell. Soon, all the new Naga descendants of the Sea Snake Patriarch will surge out of the new Naga Empire and sweep the entire world, destroying the human kingdoms. After hearing this, Queen Lanqi's expression changed completely. Whether it was for the human kingdoms or the new Naga Empire, this matter was devastating. Yang Dingtian said, The most direct way is to kill Boyi, because he's probably the only one who can learn the Greater Space spell. After hearing this, Queen Lanqi shook her head and said, It's useless to kill Boyi. The Greater Space spell sent by High Excion is definitely a code scroll. In your human kingdoms, it will definitely be burned after reading, but in New Naga, every code will be thoroughly analyzed by the spiritual type Naga elders. So as long as they are willing, they can write a second or third Greater Space spell scroll. Yang Dingtian said. Then kill the human Wentian. Only he has the void-splitting fire. Without the void-splitting fire, he won't be able to pass through the abyss border and enter the human kingdoms. Queen Lanqi shook her head and said, It's useless. According to normal channels, of course, he can only enter the human kingdoms through the second and first dark realm. But with the Greater Space spell, he can use other methods to enter the human kingdoms. This is because the internal space of the current chaotic world is very complicated. It's definitely not on the same plane, and there's not only one way to connect. Instantly, Yang Dingtian fell silent and said, In other words, it's inevitable that the Naga descendants of the sea snakes will invade the human kingdoms. Queen Lanqi nodded and said, Unless we can kill all the ambitious Naga descendants, then we can completely destroy every Greater Space spell scroll. Yang Dingtian said, But this is completely impossible, right? Queen Lanqi said, Yang Dingtian, I believe you can see that my palace is already very desolate. Although I'm still the queen of New Naga, I'm already alone. There are less than 1,000 Naga people who are loyal to me. Even my own people, the Nagas, are no longer on my side. Yang Dingtian understood this very well. This was because the entire new Naga was desperate about the breakthrough of their spiritual energy. Their energy bottleneck had been for thousands of years. Not only the sea snake descendants, but also the Naga descendants of the merfolk were thinking of ways to break out of the prison that was New Naga. Last time, when Buikao started a rebellion, Queen Lan Chi's people, the Nagas, stood by the side and did not help. Although Buikao was defeated, he received most of the sympathy. Lan Chi and Yang Dingtian suddenly fell completely silent. The situation in front of them was very clear. The people of New Naga were rushing out and sweeping the world, and no one could stop them. It was only a matter of time before the human kingdoms were invaded by New Naga. It was already impossible to stop all this from happening in New Naga. The Naga descendants of the merfolk would definitely not help Queen Lan Chi. Instead, they would join the ranks of the barbarians. The thousands of Naga descendants in Queen Lan Chi's hands would definitely not be able to stop the rebels, led by millions of barbarians. Then the two of them kept playing chess. Finally, this game of chess had ended, and Yang Dingtian had lost. His chess skills weren't a match for Lan Chi. Suddenly, Yang Dingtian said, "If there is one or even two demigods, can they stop and destroy the future Naga army invading the human kingdoms?" Queen Lan Chi said, "If there are two demigods, they can save the human kingdoms. But it will take a long time. And it will be difficult to stop most of the people in the human kingdoms from dying." Yang Dingtian understood Queen Lan Chi's words. The two demigods were undefeatable against the countless future generations of Nagas. However, it would take a very long time, and they could not directly fight against millions. They would have to use guerrilla warfare. Two demigods would need a long time to eliminate countless future Naga descendants. Queen Lan Chi continued, "Of course, without Queen Medusa, the future Naga descendants would not dare to be enemies with a real demigod Naga. But now, they feel that Queen Medusa is behind them, so they dare to attack the demigod Naga." Yes, the Naga Shuang was far inferior to Queen Medusa in terms of experience and cultivation. Therefore, with Medusa's support, the future Naga descendants of New Naga would definitely dare to attack the Naga Shuang. Queen Lan Chi said, "Has the Naga beside you completed her transformation?" Yang Dingtian said, "Yes, but she hasn't broken through to the demigod realm. If the ruins of the old Naga Empire did not explode, she would have been able to do so in a few decades. Now, the ruins have exploded violently, and the remaining energy is probably not enough for her to break through." At this point, Yang Dingtian suddenly suspected that the explosion was also the work of the soul-leaving temple. Queen Medusa did not want another demigod to appear in the world. Queen Lan Chi suddenly said, "Yang Dingtian, I will do my best to stop all of this, even if I have to pay with my life. But I have to tell you first that I can't stop them. I can only die." Yang Dingtian's face twitched, and he said, "Based on your estimation, how long will it take for Boi to gather the new Naga army and invade the human countries?" Queen Lan Chi thought for a while and said, "Maybe half a month, maybe a month. I don't know." Yang Dingtian said, "Lan Chi, if you don't sacrifice yourself and think of a way to delay him, how long can you delay him?" Queen Lan Chi closed her eyes and thought for a while before saying, "Boi is ambitious and has already called himself the king. He is determined to get the throne of New Naga. As long as he becomes the king of New Naga, not only will he be the king of the sea snake Naga, but he will also be the king of the mermaid Naga. So, if I use the throne as bait and call for a general election, I should be able to delay him for a while." General election for the throne? Yang Dingtian was stunned. Since when could there be a general election for the king? The reason why Lan Chi became the queen was entirely because of her bloodline. Queen Lan Chi said, "As long as there are enough benefits, any ancestral system can be changed. Believe me, before the invasion, Boi will even take the initiative to force me to abdicate. If I take the initiative to call for a general election, this will attract his attention, and he will spend his energy on lobbying the mermaids. This way, I should be able to delay him for a while, maybe half a year." Yang Dingtian nodded. In Boyi's mind, it did not matter if he invaded the world half a year earlier or half a year later. Especially when he could become the new king of New Naga. Delaying it for half a year was not a price to pay at all. Queen Lan Qi said. Moreover, as long as he becomes the new king, he can take charge of the scripture pavilion. This is even more tempting to Boyi. Half a year was enough for at least a considerable number of humans to retreat into the Empire of Darkness. Queen Lan Qi said, I can help you delay for half a year, but do you have any way to save yourself? Yang Dingtian shook his head and said, I have a slightly vague direction. Originally, it should be hundreds of years before we can research that part. However, in the face of destruction, I can only risk my life. Queen Lan Qi said, What direction? Yang Dingtian said, The internal collision of energy, fission or fusion. Queen Lan Qi's expression changed and said, This belongs to the crystal civilization and a part of the occult? Yang Dingtian nodded. Queen Lan Qi said, But this is very, very profound. Yang Dingtian said, I know. Although it's impossible, I have to give it a try. I can't just sit and wait for death. Queen Lan Qi was silent for a moment, then said, In fact, New Naga also has a branch that studies occult. The crystal civilization is a supplement to the study of spiritual energy. I can give you this batch of wise men. Yang Dingtian was instantly astonished as he said, If by any chance I succeed, then these future generations of Naga may all die. Queen Lan Qi said, If they don't die, the chaos world will die. Choose the lesser of two evils. Yang Dingtian immediately bowed and said. Queen Lan Qi was silent for a moment, as if she had fallen into an extremely difficult choice. After a full quarter of an hour, Queen Lan Qi said, You have to return to the human countries as soon as possible. Not only do you have to take away those wise men, but also take away the scripture pavilion. Yang Dingtian trembled. The scripture pavilion was all the knowledge treasures of the Naga Empire. It was the inheritance of the Naga civilization. Only the king of the Naga Empire was qualified to control it. Now Queen Lan Qi wanted to give it to him. Queen Lan Qi said, Once I step down as king, this scripture pavilion will be lost. Instead of falling into the hands of an ambitious person, it's better to give it to you. Also, there are many books of the crystal civilization inside. Yang Dingtian bowed deeply and said, Thank you, Your Majesty. Next, Queen Lan Qi solemnly handed the energy cube of the scripture pavilion to Yang Dingtian. Chapter 1157. Queen Lan Qi said, Last time, you were only allowed to study it for a short period of time. There was a lot of information inside that you couldn't unlock. This time, I'm completely handing over the scripture pavilion cube to you. Other than a very small amount of content, you can read the books and scrolls inside. From now on, you are the guardian of this cube. Yang Dingtian was shocked. This isn't appropriate. After all, this is the inheritance of the Naga Empire civilization, and I'm just a human. Queen Lan Qi said, A large part of the construction of this scripture pavilion cube came from ancestor Shiwu Piaoyan. Therefore, as his successor, it's only right for you to guard this cube. Yang Dingtian recalled that when Buikao started his rebellion, Queen Lan Qi wanted to give the cube to Yang Dingtian. But later, she successfully eliminated Buikao's rebellion, and this matter was dropped. This cube seemed to have caused Lan Qi a lot of pain. It was an incomparably huge responsibility. Therefore, deep in her heart, she might have long wanted to be free. Yang Dingtian said, Lan Qi, I might die earlier than you. Are you sure you want to give this cube to me? Queen Lan Qi nodded. Yang Dingtian said, Moreover, I might have sex with demigod Naga next. At that time, I'll share my life and energy with her. Then she might also look at the contents of the cube. It's hard to say whether this is a blessing or a curse. Queen Lan Qi smiled and said, Your Excellency Yang Dingtian, this is your responsibility, isn't it? Yang Dingtian couldn't help but be stunned. Once he felt that he had sex with demigod Naga, no matter what Naga did, Yang Dingtian wouldn't be able to escape responsibility. Alright, don't refuse. Queen Lan Qi said. At most, When everything settles down and you and I are still alive, you can return it to me. Yang Dingtian said. Then I'll accept it. Then Yang Dingtian took off all his clothes. Queen Lan Qi and Yang Dingtian sat cross-legged facing each other. The complete transfer of the cube required the brain, the heart, and the sea of vital energy at the same time. Therefore, the distance between the two of them must be close enough. Are you ready to let go and accept everything? Lan Qi said. You have to be mentally prepared. During this period of time, when our consciousnesses are intertwined, there will be no secrets between us. If I find out about your shameful secrets, don't blame me. Yang Dingtian replied. Up until now, I don't have any unspeakable secrets. I do. Lan Qi smiled. Then, Lan Qi and Yang Dingtian's eyes locked onto each other. The two of them completely relaxed their mental defenses, allowing the other party to explore, search, release, and communicate with them. Although neither of them were masters of the spirit element, Queen Lan Qi was still a Naga of the later generation. Yang Dingtian, on the other hand, had many deep meditation sessions. Therefore, this kind of communication between consciousness and spirit was not difficult at all. Of course, this was definitely a very dangerous behavior. It was completely equivalent to two computers giving up any firewalls, sharing any passwords and storage. To put it bluntly, the contents of the two computers were completely shared. The other party could easily copy and delete the private chat records, online banking passwords, and so on your computer. As long as the other party found the location, there would be no secrets. Of course, this kind of fusion was very short. However, as long as one person had ulterior motives, they could easily steal the other party's secrets, and even cause irreparable damage to the other party's brain. Of course, it was also very difficult to achieve consciousness fusion, because one had to completely let down all their mental defenses. Even the slightest bit of consciousness fusion could not be carried out. And this kind of mental defense was largely instinctive. It was not something that could be removed just because one wanted to. Therefore, most people in this world could not carry out consciousness fusion. Only a completely selfless heart could do it. Even if a person was completely unconscious, even if they had lost all their consciousness, they would instinctively have a mental defense in a blurry light. Yang Dingtian's mental defenses were peeled off layer by layer. He had completely given up all his secrets, including the secrets of the greater space technique. This was because the greater space technique had already been obtained by the sea snake descendant, Naga. Therefore, it didn't matter if Queen Lan Qi knew about it. The greater space technique was Yang Dingtian's biggest secret. If he could even show this to Queen Lan Qi, it meant that he had completely let down his mental defenses. Obviously, Queen Lan Qi was calmer than Yang Dingtian, and had let down all her mental defenses earlier. In an instant, an incomparably wonderful scene appeared. Yang Dingtian could easily read any of Queen Lan Qi's memories, secrets, and information. Queen Lan Qi could also easily read any of Yang Dingtian's memories and secrets. The two of them seemed unwilling to give up this rare curiosity. In the beginning, they didn't immediately transfer the cube's consciousness password. Instead, they excitedly read each other's memories. Queen Lan Qi was concerned about two things. First, Yang Dingtian's life on Earth was completely unknown to her. It was a completely different world. She was completely excited to experience everything. This was much clearer and more realistic than watching a movie. It was completely immersive. As for the second point, Queen Lan Qi was concerned about the private lives of Yang Dingtian and his women. It seemed that women were very gossipy. As for Yang Dingtian, reading Queen Lan Qi's memories was very messy. This was because Queen Lan Qi's life was very monotonous and boring. Almost every day she read, played, rested, and slept. Then, Yang Dingtian easily read Queen Lan Qi's short and unforgettable love history. That was the only man Queen Lan Qi had ever loved. But the two of them didn't have any intimate contact. Because of his position, that man gradually distanced himself from Queen Lan Qi. In the end, he couldn't withstand the confinement space of New Naga, and flew to the endless sea, completely disappearing into the vast void. Immediately after, Yang Dingtian suddenly read an incomparably heart-palpitating scene. Queen Lan Qi was doing that kind of thing to herself. That's right. She was satisfying herself. Sometimes it was in the bathtub, sometimes under the blanket, sometimes in the library, and sometimes under the dining table. It was really unimaginable that the dignified and virtuous Queen Lan Qi was actually so wild. She even secretly did this kind of thing when meeting important figures. After countless years, Queen Lan Qi had never had a true partner. And at that time, she often called out names. Sometimes, she called out her unforgettable lover. Later on, she began to call out Yang Dingtian's name. In an instant, Yang Dingtian's face and ears turned red. This was because these memories were too realistic. It was as if he was really watching everything happen. It was completely three-dimensional, and much more realistic than movies. As for Queen Lan Qi, in the end, she searched for scenes of the private lives of Yang Dingtian and his wives. She even specifically searched for these memories. It seemed that the two of them really had no secrets. It was just like a normal person. Once they entered another person's computer, their first reaction would probably be to see if there were any selfies or videos on the other person's computer. Then, they would see if there were any action movies on the other person's computer. Yang Dingtian and Lan Qi had both become magnanimous ordinary people at this time. In the end, Lan Qi looked at Yang Dingtian's private life, and any scenes of him and his wives being intimate. As for Yang Dingtian, he had also seen through Lan Qi's gorgeous private life. After a full hour, the two of them realized that it was time to get down to business. It was time to transfer to the Hidden Scriptures Pavilion. Both of them fell silent. Then, Queen Lan Qi entered all the memories, all the consciousness, and all the spiritual passwords of the Hidden Scriptures Pavilion into Yang Dingtian's brain. At the same time, she forced the cube of the Hidden Scriptures Pavilion out of his heart inch by inch. Then inch by inch, she squeezed it into Yang Dingtian's heart. Just the energy cube and consciousness memories weren't enough. She also needed to bind the mystical qi and qi si. Queen Lan Qi's hand was placed on Yang Dingtian's qi si. She inserted the mystical qi chain of the Hidden Scriptures Pavilion's cube bit by bit. The entire process lasted for a full hour. Of course, this speed was already considered fast. Then, Queen Lan Qi completely transferred the Hidden Scriptures Pavilion's cube to Yang Dingtian. She truly handed it over completely to Yang Dingtian, without any reservations. This included all the cultural inheritances of the Naga Empire, countless scrolls, countless knowledge, and everything. After everything was done, the two of them returned to the real world and ended the fusion of consciousness. Then, the two of them fell into an awkward silence. Okay, you take the wise men of the crystal civilization and the occult back to the human countries. Even if there's only a slim chance, you have to use all your strength to create an energy weapon that can destroy millions of new Naga. Queen Lan Qi said, "Tomorrow, I'll deal with Bo Yiming and try to delay the new Naga's invasion of the human countries until half a year later." "Okay," Yang Dingtian said. "Please try your best to survive." "I will," Queen Lan Qi said. "You can go now." Yang Dingtian got up. Suddenly Lan Qi said, "Why don't we take advantage of the last bit of time we have to have a friendly love affair? Let me have a taste of it too." Yang Dingtian was stunned. For some reason he nodded and said, "Okay." Chapter 1158. Yang Dingtian and Queen Lan Qi hesitated for a moment before hugging and kissing each other. More than 2 hours later, Queen Lan Qi raised her head lazily from Yang Dingtian's arms. Her beautiful face was still a soul-stirring blush. She smiled and said, "We are not the real Naga, so we can't share life and energy with you." Yang Dingtian gently stroked her back. Humans were not plants and could not be emotionless. Previously, Lan Qi had casually said that this was friendship. But after it really happened, the two of them instinctively felt connected by blood. Next, Queen Lan Qi would have to deal with Bo Yiming, and she was completely alone. Yang Dingtian could not be at ease. Next, no matter what, you have to work hard to protect your life, okay? Yang Dingtian said. "Don't worry," Queen Lan Qi said. "I'm reluctant to die for this feeling. When I lose the election and lose the throne, they won't kill me." Yang Dingtian said. "But you can't hand over the scripture pavilion. Otherwise, I'll return the scripture pavilion cube to you. Queen Lan Chi smiled and said, It seems that having sex with someone and not having sex with someone is indeed different. Then she kissed Yang Dingtian. Don't worry, the scripture pavilion is just a cube. I have more than one fake one. Really? Yang Dingtian was puzzled. Queen Lan Chi condensed another energy cube from her chest and said, Look, it's almost exactly the same. It's just that most of the scrolls inside are blank. Yang Dingtian was relieved. However, it was normal for Queen Lan Chi to have a fake scripture pavilion cube, because it was very likely that she would be forced to hand over the cube. Taking a deep breath, Queen Lan Chi seemed to be greedy for the smell in Yang Dingtian's arms. After struggling for a moment, she propped up her delicate body. Immediately, her graceful curves became even more soul-stirring. Okay, I'll go find the wise man of the crystal civilization. You take them away secretly, Queen Lan Chi said. Yang Dingtian asked, Won't their departure arouse suspicion? Queen Lan Chi said, Don't worry, they have been in seclusion for 1,000 years. Not to mention disappearing, even if they died, no one would notice. The topic of their research is too biased. Next, Queen Lan Chi drew water to wash herself in Yang Dingtian. Then, he changed into his clothes one by one and left the room. You stay inside. Even though there's no one around, you should hide yourself just to be safe. Yang Dingtian asked. Earlier on, we were tossing around so much. Would anyone have seen or heard it? Queen Lan Chi shook her head and said, Don't worry. There are so few people in the palace, and this place is very remote. Every time I come here to play chess, I don't allow anyone to follow me. No one knows you've been here. Then Lan Chi left gracefully. Yang Dingtian sat in the house and turned invisible. He couldn't help but feel a little confused. He didn't know why he agreed just now. Now he almost never provoked love and sin. He didn't even dare to provoke Dishi Bian and Ling Wu. But once he agreed, it meant that he had a responsibility. More than 2 hours later, Queen Lan Chi brought 8 aged elders in. Yang Dingtian couldn't help but be a little astonished. Even though the later Naga wasn't the real Naga, their lifespan was still frighteningly long. There was almost no old man in the entire new Naga. This was because even the first generation of Naga looked like a middle-aged man at most. Like Bo Yiming and Bu Yikao, they simply looked young and strong. And these 8 wise men were at most the first and later Naga. They actually looked so old. Lan Chi said, they studied spiritual topics and exhausted their efforts. Moreover, they neglected martial arts and rarely devoured energy, so they naturally look old. Suddenly, Yang Dingtian couldn't help but feel a little respect. 8 elders, this time, I'm going to bring you out of the new Naga space to continue the research of the Crystal Stone civilization. Yang Dingtian bowed and said, But these research may be used to eliminate the new Naga race, which is your kind. The leading old man said, We'll prevent those traitors from going against the flow. Once they break out of the barrier of their ancestors, the only outcome is to bring the entire world to destruction. For the sake of the Chaos civilization and the eternity of the Naga civilization, eliminating them has become correct and righteous. Yang Dingtian sighed in his heart. The other party didn't need his persuasion at all. They had their own correct worldview. Then, the leader of the wise men said, But sir, I'm very ashamed to say that although we have a certain amount of research on the Crystal Stone civilization, it's still very, very difficult to achieve the effect you've mentioned. It's almost impossible. Of course, we'll work hard. But sir, don't expect too much, lest you'll be disappointed in the end. Yang Dingtian bowed and said, Yes. All right, you can be on your way. Queen Lan Chi said, Next, each of us has to fight for every bit of time. You have to be as fast as possible, and I have to be as slow as possible. Yang Dingtian nodded and reached out to touch Queen Lan Chi's face. He said solemnly, Remember, you must survive. Don't worry. Queen Lan Chi nodded. Then Yang Dingtian brought the 8 wise men. All of them were enveloped in the range of the mystic invisibility technique. They left the palace and flew toward the endless sea. After flying for tens of thousands of miles, they were completely sure that they had reached the end of the endless sea. Yang Dingtian used the spatial technique and created a spatial door. He said, 8 elders, after jumping through the spatial door, there will be a terrifying engulfing fog. So please be sure to jump through the spatial door at the same time as me. The 8 wise men looked at the spatial door with dazzled eyes. To them, the greater spatial technique was the most mysterious and the most profound martial wisdom. It was the crown of all energy civilizations. After hearing Yang Dingtian's words, the 8 of them nodded and said, "Although our cultivation isn't high, we can still jump through the spatial door at the same time." Yang Dingtian injected a huge amount of mystic qi to make the spatial door as big as possible. Whoosh, Yang Dingtian and the 8 future Naga wise men jumped through the spatial door at the same time. After shuttling for a while, the 9 of them instantly entered the 3rd dark domain. At this time, there was an endless engulfing fog everywhere. Yang Dingtian immediately released the void-splitting flame to purify the surrounding engulfing fog. Then, he brought the 8 of them and flew out of the 3rd dark domain at the fastest speed, arriving at the border of the abyss. Then, he used the void-splitting flame to purify the border of the abyss and entered the 2nd dark domain. 2.5 days later, Yang Dingtian led the 8 future Naga wise men into Cloud Sky City. At this time, less than 5 days had passed since Yang Dingtian left. The first batch of Council of Light and Little Western Paradise's evacuation to the Empire of Darkness had already begun. There were already more than 100,000 people who had entered the Empire of Darkness. Under the control of Vulture, the surviving Dark Colossal Dragon and Dark Valiant Dragon became the tools for the Council of Light to retreat. The members of the Grand Priest Association once again gathered in Cloud Sky City to wait for Yang Dingtian. After Yang Dingtian arrived at Cloud Sky City, he immediately gathered the highest level of Little Western Paradise and Council of Light and held an emergency meeting. "First, I want to tell everyone that the invasion of New Naga is a foregone conclusion," Yang Dingtian said. Once these words were spoken, everyone's expression changed drastically. Yang Dingtian continued, "The last Naga army that New Naga sent out should be around 1 million. Among them, there should be no less than 10,000 first-generation Naga, who are close to the demigod level." Once these words were spoken, everyone's face was filled with despair. The Demon King was close to the demigod level. Just one of him was enough to bring disaster to the human countries. Now there were close to 10,000 of them. It was already a hopeless battle, and there was no resistance at all. Yang Dingtian said, "The invasion of New Naga should be in half a year's time. In other words, we only have half a year's time." Finally, Yang Dingtian introduced to everyone present, "Beside me are the wise men of New Naga. Their research direction is all about the crystal civilization. A few years ago, we discovered Crystal X, and now, we have reached the 9th generation of the crystal formula. A few years ago, we started to research the internal fission of the crystal. Once we succeed, the power of the fission of the crystal will be tens of thousands of times stronger than the explosion of Crystal X. This is probably our only hope to destroy New Naga." Then, Yang Dingtian said to the warlock leaders present, "I hereby announce that all warlock organizations of the Council of Light, the relevant priests of the High Priest Association, and the wise men of New Naga will work together to research the internal fission of the crystal. We must create a killing machine to destroy the invading Naga rebels." "Yes," the 3 sides said in unison. Immediately the warlock leader said, "Lord, of course we will do our best. But I have to tell you that the possibility of success is almost zero. This theory is correct, but according to our estimation, the crystal civilization will develop for at least another 100 years before it can enter the real experiment of the fission of the crystal." The priest of the High Priest Association nodded and said, "I think so too. This is a very serious matter, and it can't be done overnight." The wise men of New Naga said, "I think so too." Wuyu suddenly said, "Yang Dingtian, maybe letting you and the Naga Duga Shuang break through to demigod is the only way to save the human countries." Yang Dingtian said, "Even if we break through to demigod, we can't stop the invasion of Naga rebels." Wuyu said, "Then at least we can save the human civilization, right? Although there will be an astronomical number of sacrifices, at least we won't go extinct. Yang Dingtian took a deep breath and said, the research direction is still the fission of the crystal. The retreat to the torn space continues. We'll go find the Naga Shuang and discuss the next step. Hence, as soon as Yang Dingtian arrived at Cloud Heaven City, he didn't stop and used his fastest speed to fly towards the Southeast Sea region. He traveled tens of thousands of miles under the sea and arrived at the ancient Sea Serpent Empire. Using the space technique, he passed through layers of nothingness. Yang Dingtian once again arrived at the ruins of the old Naga Empire. At this time, the Naga Shuang was still devouring the huge amount of energy in the ruins. Only a quarter of the ruins of the old Naga Empire remained. Its current position was very stable, and there weren't many changes. When Yang Dingtian arrived, he didn't see Shuang. She must have gone into the center of the ruins again. Yang Dingtian used the Chaos Emperor Grade Soul Sword to knock on the crystal ground of the ruins, telling Shuang that he was here. Then, he sat on the surface and waited. Unexpectedly, the Naga Shuang came out of the ground in the next minute. She was overjoyed that Yang Dingtian had returned so quickly. Chapter 1159. Naga Shuang had thought that Yang Dingtian would take a long time to return, even after she had devoured all the energy in the ruins. She didn't expect that he would return after only a few days. When she emerged from the center of the ruins, she was still in the shape of Naga. After completely emerging from the ground, she immediately transformed into a stunning beauty. Seeing Yang Dingtian's solemn expression, she couldn't help but ask, "What's wrong?" Yang Dingtian said, "Things are just as you predicted. It's developing in the worst direction." Naga Shuang said, "Is it new Naga?" Yang Dingtian nodded and said, "The soul-leaving temple found Queen Hai Xian and brought the greater space technique to new Naga. Now the next generation of the sea snake descendants, Naga Patriarch Boi Ming, has already learned the greater space technique. They are about to break out of the confinement space and take over the entire world." Naga Shuang frowned and said, "How much longer?" Yang Dingtian said, "It should be about half a year. Queen Lan Qi of New Naga is using the throne and the cube in the library to delay. However, it can only delay them for half a year. The human countries have already begun to evacuate and enter the Empire of Darkness." Naga Shuang instinctively wanted to say, "Don't bother about the human countries anymore." However, because of this sentence, she almost fell out with Yang Dingtian and didn't want to repeat the same mistake. Yang Dingtian suddenly said, "Shuang, when can you break through to the demigod realm as soon as possible?" Naga Shuang shook her head and said, "It should be impossible. If I had been devouring Xianqi crystals all the time before the explosion, I could have broken through to the demigod realm in a few decades. But now it's impossible." Yang Dingtian said, "Although only a quarter of the ruins is left, the energy inside should still be astronomical. It should be enough for you to break through to the demigod realm." Naga Shuang nodded and said, "That's enough. 10 or 20 demigods are more than enough. But husband, you have to know that the crystal itself doesn't have any Xianqi energy. It's just an energy formation that's gathering and devouring the Xianqi energy of the entire world. Now this ruin was only a quarter of its original size, so its ability to absorb and condense profound energy was less than a tenth of its original power. Therefore, the concentration of Xianqi would be greatly reduced. The crystallization of Xianqi, that was hundreds of thousands of times stronger, no longer exists." Yang Dingtian immediately understood what Naga Shuang meant. Naga Shuang said, "The Xianqi concentration required for each level of breakthrough is completely different." Yang Dingtian asked, "Is the Xianqi concentration not enough to break through to the demigod realm?" Naga Shuang said, "The current concentration is barely acceptable. However, the ruins are dissipating with each passing day. It won't be long before it reaches a critical point, and there won't be any more chances for him to make a breakthrough to demigod." Yang Dingtian couldn't help but close his eyes in agony. The possibility of creating a crystal fission weapon to destroy the Naga army of the future was almost zero. Not only did the warlocks of the Council of Light say this, but the High Priest Association, and the wise men of New Naga also said this. Yang Dingtian also understood that this involved the most serious science, and it was really difficult to achieve it overnight. For example, if you asked the United States to create an atomic bomb before 1910, it would probably be impossible. This door had already been closed. The other door was for Naga Shuang to break through to demigod realm as quickly as possible. Then let Shuang enter New Naga, kill Boyi, destroy the greater space technique, and forcibly suppress the will of the entire New Naga. But according to Shuang her chances of breaking through to demigod realm were very, very slim, let alone breaking through to demigod realm in a short time. In this way, facing the Naga rebel army of New Naga, there was really almost nothing that could be done. Yang Dingtian racked his brains, but still couldn't find a way. Suddenly he said, Shuang if you obtain the Empire of Darkness and control the Throne of Darkness, can you break through to demigod realm? You also know that the Demon King devoured endless energy on the Throne of Darkness and stored it in the abyss of his sea of energy. Naga Shuang thought for a while and nodded. Husband, in theory it is possible, because the Skirich imperial capital of the Throne of Darkness can condense the celestial chi of several continents into one and forcibly inject it into the sea of energy. In theory, the concentration can even surpass that of the ruins of the old Naga Empire. But, Yang Dingtian asked. Naga Shuang said, first, it is very difficult to obtain control of the Throne of Darkness. It is almost impossible. Second, even if I obtain the Throne of Darkness, even if the Skirich imperial capital injects a high concentration of celestial chi into my body, it will take many, many years for me to break through to demigod realm. It is impossible to achieve in half a year no matter what. Yang Dingtian closed his eyes in pain and said, this won't do, and that won't do. Are we really going to watch the human nations go extinct? Naga Shuang wanted to speak again and ask Yang Dingtian to not bother about anything. At most, he would bring his loved ones and leave the human kingdoms. However, she didn't say anything in the end. Moreover, once the next generation of Naga broke out of the confinement space, there would be no safe place in the entire chaotic world. It wasn't just Yang Dingtian. Naga Duga Shuang was the same as well. Of course, Naga Shuang still couldn't understand why the soul-leaving temple had given birth to her. She also didn't know whether the soul-leaving temple was an enemy or a friend to her. Suddenly Naga Shuang said, actually you have another way. Although it is extremely uncertain, you can still try. Yang Dingtian asked, what way? Naga Shuang said, perhaps one day, Queen Medusa will pass everything on to Shiman Ningning, and you are Shiman Ningning's lover, so perhaps there is room for negotiation between the two of you. Yang Dingtian asked, do you mean that you want me to negotiate with the soul-leaving temple? Yes, Naga Shuang said. At the very least, you have to know the purpose of the soul-leaving temple and why it is trying to destroy the human nations. Is there another way to solve the problem? But in that way, you may have to pay a price. Yang Dingtian was silent for a moment and said, if I can save the human nations, I'm willing to pay a small price. However, I suspect that I don't have what the soul-leaving temple wants. Naga Shuang said, don't belittle yourself. You must be of great value. Otherwise, you wouldn't have become the spokesperson of the god of chaos. You wouldn't have become the only man who can give birth to demigods and foxes, nagas, mermen and so on. You are very special and of great value. Yang Dingtian said, even so no one can know where the soul-leaving temple is. Naga Shuang said, where did the soul-leaving temple's spiritual power last appear? Yang Dingtian said, in the Dongli grassland, under the pyramid where Queen Hai Xian was imprisoned. Naga Shuang said, then go there and wait. Since the soul-leaving temple found Hai Xian there must be a mark of the soul-leaving temple in that place. If Medusa is willing, she will meet you and talk to you. Then, Naga Shuang said, don't forget that you are Shiman Ningning's only love partner. Yang Dingtian nodded and said, I'll go immediately. Thank you for your advice. Then, Yang Dingtian didn't stop at all and left again. Once again, they flew through countless voids, flying for an unknown distance. He passed through the ruins of the ancient sea serpent empire that were wrapped in thick dark matter. After traveling through tens of thousands of miles of ocean and returning to the human kingdom, he still didn't stop at all and flew directly to the Dongli grassland. A few days later, Yang Dingtian flew to the Dongli grassland that was full of ruins. This place was already desolate, and there were almost no traces of the half-human race. Countless beasts had reoccupied this place. Yang Dingtian came to the capital of the Naga Empire, one of the pyramids. Following the pyramid, he went down and down. After a few thousand meters, Yang Dingtian came to the place where Queen Hai Xian was once imprisoned. Then he sat cross-legged here. Queen Medusa of the Soul-Leaving Temple. I am the Lord of Humans, Yang Dingtian, the successor of the Void-Floating Flame. I want to negotiate with you. If you are willing, please grant me a meeting with you. Yang Dingtian shouted loudly. Then he slowly closed his eyes and entered a deep sleep and meditation. He even gave up his mental defenses layer by layer. Here, he quietly waited for Queen Medusa's response. Since the Soul-Leaving Temple could contact Queen Hai Xian here, they could also contact Yang Dingtian, as long as Medusa was willing. Soon enough, Yang Dingtian entered a deep state of meditation and sleep. His entire person was in a daze. Chapter 1160. Yang Dingtian let go of all his mental defenses and waited for Medusa's arrival. Being selfless and broad-minded should be the best explanation for him. He didn't care if Medusa knew any secrets or thoughts. Just like that, he waited day by day. However, the Soul-Leaving Palace never contacted him. Time passed day by day, and Yang Dingtian's heart was burning with anxiety. 7 days passed. Yang Dingtian decided to wait another day. If the Soul-Leaving Palace still didn't contact him after a day, he would leave directly. A day passed quickly, and the Soul-Leaving Palace still didn't appear. Yang Dingtian woke up from his hazy meditation state. He opened his eyes and was about to leave. Whoosh! The moment he opened his eyes, the scenery around him suddenly changed. The hell prison under the pyramid, which was originally filled with energy crystals, disappeared and was replaced by a blurry light and shadow. Gray light and shadow. Everything around was gray. The entire world seemed to have fallen into a very strange state. It was like a black and white film from before, but also like a ghost space in some movies. Immediately after, a completely black mass condensed in the space. This black mass turned into a shadow with a human face and a snake's body. Only an outline could be seen, and the specific face couldn't be seen clearly. Only its 2 eyes were emitting a pale light, which was very similar to a film negative. The hair on the top of her head seemed to be countless small snakes, each twisting and spitting out their tongues. You can't wait and want to leave? The black voice in front of him said. The voice wasn't pleasant at all, and it was impossible to tell whether it was a man or a woman, or even a species. This was because it wasn't a voice at all, and it appeared directly in the brain. Queen Medusa? Yang Dingtian asked. Yes, it's me, the black shadow said. Yang Dingtian. You are the mastermind behind the Doomsday War, and the ultimate backer of the evil ways. Yes, Medusa said. Yang Dingtian asked. You're sending Hai Xian to the new Naga dimension to hand over the greater space technique to Boyi? Yes, Medusa said. Yang Dingtian. You must let the Great War of Armageddon happen and kill countless people in the human world, right? Yes, Medusa said. Yang Dingtian. Why? Medusa said. No reason. You don't need to know. Yang Dingtian raised his eyebrows. Then he said, Can you not do this? Can we make a deal? What are your conditions in exchange for stopping the invasion of Naga in the future? No, Medusa said. Yang Dingtian. You can state any conditions as long as I can fulfill them. Medusa said. I don't have any conditions. Yang Dingtian. Are you determined to destroy the entire human world? Medusa said. Yang Dingtian, you want to save the human world, right? Yang Dingtian. Yes. Medusa said. Then don't worry, the human world will not be destroyed. When most of the human world is dead, when the future Naga almost occupies the entire human world, I will destroy them all and turn them into fossils. Yang Dingtian was shocked when he heard this. Why was that? Was Medusa crazy? Killing most of the people in the human world, and killing all the future Naga invaders? Was she playing a game? Yang Dingtian said hoarsely. Then, how many people are you going to kill in the human world? Medusa said, more than 99%. 1 in 1,000 people can survive. Yang Dingtian's expression changed completely. Currently, the human world had less than 2 billion people, which meant that only 2 million people could survive. The rest would all die. Medusa continued, your family and friends will be able to survive. Even the upper echelons of your radiant parliament can live. But you have to promise me one thing. Yang Dingtian. What? Medusa said. How about you become the new demon king? Yang Dingtian's expression changed and he sneered. Your Excellency, are you joking? Medusa said. No, I'm very serious. Of course, I won't let you become the demon king immediately. Instead, I'll let you live comfortably for 100 years, then fake your death, and become the demon king of evil ways. Lunatic, you're a lunatic. Yang Dingtian sneered. And you're completely delusional. The demon king is the corruption of the soul and spirit. Do you think it's possible for me to do it? Medusa said. I gave you the complete primeval evil spirit, and you fell easily. Nihility Piao Ling was once like you, incomparably righteous and pure. But just half of the primeval evil spirit made her fall. Yang Dingtian's heart almost twisted, and he wanted to rush up and tear this shadow into pieces. Medusa said, don't worry, Yang Dingtian, you won't lose out in this deal. As long as you agree, I will give you something. With this thing, you can wipe out the future generations of Naga at the last moment, and you will still be the savior. Yang Dingtian. But at that time, the people of the whole world will have almost died, and my saving will have no meaning. Medusa said. At least, the civilization of the human countries will continue, won't it? And Yang Dingtian, aren't you tired of playing the role of a righteous messenger and a savior for your whole life? Why don't you change the role? The decisive, dark, and terrifying demon king is also not bad. Yang Dingtian sneered. Then 200 years later, I will lead the new evil ways and launch the world extermination war again, right? Medusa said. No, not 200 years, but 500 years. Because too many people died this time. It will take about 500 years to reproduce more than a few 100 million people. Yang Dingtian laughed and said, then at that time, I will play the role of the demon king. Who will play the role of me next? Pull in another savior from the earth plane? Medusa shook her head and said, no, you have 3 demigod sons, don't you? Instantly, Yang Dingtian was enraged. This lunatic in front of him not only wanted him to play the role of the demon king, but also wanted him and his father to kill each other? Lunatic, a complete lunatic. Medusa smiled and said, Yang Dingtian, didn't you want to make a deal? Is this the content of the deal? Yang Dingtian, what if I don't agree? Medusa said, do you think that a chess piece has the right to resist? For example, when the Naga army of the future destroys the human countries, your family, your Council of Light will all die. And I will give you a method to save them. Would you reject it? If you don't agree, your family and friends will all die. Yang Dingtian gritted his teeth. Suddenly, he understood Wen Tian's thoughts. Mutual destruction, mutual destruction. When a person's fate was controlled, it was the most pitiful and painful thing. Medusa said, Yang Dingtian, no one can escape the clutches of fate, isn't that so? At this moment, let alone Wen Tian, even Yang Dingtian had the thought of mutual destruction. Who cares? Let the entire primal chaos world be destroyed, and kill this Medusa in front of him. Yang Dingtian. Your Excellency Medusa, is there a god of primal chaos in this world? Medusa, yes there is. Yang Dingtian. Then are you the god of primal chaos? Even if you are a false god. Medusa smiled and said, there is indeed a god of primal chaos in this world. One is a true god, and one is a false god. But I'm very sorry, I'm not even a false god. Next, Medusa said, but to you lowly humans I'm equivalent to a god, isn't that so? Yes, Medusa of the soul-leaving palace had controlled the fate of the entire world for countless years. Yang Dingtian was silent for a long time. Then he said, may I ask, Were you the one who brought me from Earth to this world? No, Medusa. I don't have this ability yet. Only a god has this ability. Okay, I understand, Yang Dingtian said calmly. Medusa. Then what is your choice? Yang Dingtian curled his lips and didn't answer. Medusa didn't stop at all. Her figure, which was formed by the endless darkness, instantly dissipated. At the same time, the space of the gray shadow disappeared without a trace. The surroundings returned to the appearance of the energy prison under the pyramid. Yang Dingtian left the Dongli grassland and didn't enter Cloud Heaven City, because now, the most important organizations of light had been transferred to the Empire of Darkness. Yang Dingtian entered the Empire of Darkness and found the most important organization, Organization X. Now, the Demon Fox, the spiritual type Naga, and the three races of the human kingdom had placed their hopes of destroying the future Naga on Organization X. The entire High Priest Association and all the Demon Fox experts involved in the energy civilization of the Demon Fox race. All the warlocks of the human kingdom, as well as the wisdom of the future Naga's crystal civilization, had all entered this organization. Almost every day they didn't sleep or rest studying crystal fission and fusion. They hoped to create a great killing weapon and completely destroy the future Naga army. As for Yang Dingtian, he had already passed the knowledge he had regarding the nuclear bomb to this organization for research. This time, Yang Dingtian went to ask about the progress. The person who received Yang Dingtian was the president of Organization X, the researcher of the new Naga's crystal civilization, Yuan Beijing. This name sounded very strange, but in fact, it was just a transliteration of the mermaid language. He only meant peace. Sir Yang Dingtian, Yuan Beijing said, your theory is completely feasible. Not only is the internal fission of the crystal feasible, but also the drastic change. At present, fission is much simpler, because in the entire chaotic world, there are indeed energy crystals that are very unstable internally. For example, Crystal X is one of them. Therefore, the bombs made from Crystal X are very powerful. Yang Dingtian nodded. The nuclear materials on Earth, whether it was uranium or plutonium, were all radioactive materials. They were not like Crystal X, which was directly used to make bombs. Yuan Beijing said. Of course, the instability of Crystal X is still relatively superficial and superficial. Therefore, it can't achieve the kind of internal fission you mentioned. Yang Dingtian nodded and said, then can you find materials that are unstable internally and can cause fission? Yes, Yuan Beijing said. There are many such materials in the dark realm, and there is more than one kind. I have identified 3 kinds so far. The Little Western Paradise had 2 of them, but only one of them was a crystal, while the other 2 were mysterious substances. Of course, we have already obtained these 2, and have experimented with them. Also, according to your theory, they are named Y material, Z material, and S crystal. Yang Dingtian said in surprise. Then is it possible to create a finished weapon before the Naga army arrives? Impossible, absolutely impossible, Yuan Beijing said. Sir Yang Dingtian, your theory has made us take a detour for at least a few thousand years. It has a decisive effect on the entire crystal civilization. In the Naga Empire, the mainstream is the energy-devouring civilization, followed by the spiritual energy civilization, and the weakest is the crystal energy civilization. But your theory has made it possible for our crystal energy civilization to counterattack the other 2 civilizations. In the future, we will even completely defeat these 2 energy civilizations. We will dominate the entire world civilization for tens of thousands of years, until the spiritual energy civilization has a huge breakthrough. Your theory has completely changed the history of the entire chaotic world. It is incomparably great, but, Yuan Beijing said, to make the crystal fission completely take shape, not to mention half a year, even 10 years, or even 50 years may not be enough. We can't even solve the simplest problem. We have not even seen the inside of these 3 unstable materials. Yang Dingtian said, completely impossible? Yes, impossible. Yuan Beijing said. It is a great fire, the fire of civilization. But it will take at least 100 years before it can truly start a fire. Yang Dingtian's face trembled and said in pain, I understand. Yuan Yibei's words were resolute and decisive. In other words, it was impossible to hope that the X organization could develop a killing weapon and change the outcome of the war. This was once Yang Dingtian's biggest hope, but it had been destroyed. Okay, I understand, please continue, Yang Dingtian said. We will, Yuan Yibei said. After the conversation with Yuan Yibei ended, Yang Dingtian did not stop. He did not even visit his wife and children. Instead, he directly flew out of the Empire of Darkness. Once again, he flew toward the Southeast Sea. A few days later, Yang Dingtian did not stop, and once again arrived at the ruins of the old Naga Empire. This time, the Naga Shuang was still sitting in the same place and waiting for him. She did not even enter the center of the ruins to devour the energy. The moment she saw Yang Dingtian, the Naga Shuang's expression darkened. Yang Dingtian was about to speak, but the Naga Shuang shook her head and said, You don't need to say anything. I can read everything. I know what you said to Medusa. I know what kind of deal she proposed. And I also know what you think. Yang Dingtian closed his eyes and lay on the ground in pain. Could it be that all the paths had been completely destroyed? Could he only watch as the human countries were destroyed? Suddenly, the Naga Shuang said, Have you ever thought about breaking through to the demigod level alone? Yang Dingtian was stunned. Chapter 1161. It's impossible for me to become a demigod on my own, right? Yang Dingtian said bluntly. The Naga Shuang pondered for a moment, then said, You know that once Naga mates mate, they share life and energy. Yang Dingtian nodded. The Naga Shuang said, This is between Naga and Naga, but we are indeed between humans and Naga. Yang Dingtian asked, Has there ever been a human and Naga mating in history? The Naga Shuang shook her head and said, No. Yang Dingtian asked, Then what makes you think that we can mate? The Naga Shuang said, If we can mate, then we can mate. Isn't that simple? Yang Dingtian said, But after mating we share life and energy. If you can't become a demigod, then I can't either. The Naga Shuang said, Have you noticed that every time we fight, I transform into my Naga form? Yes. Of course Yang Dingtian had noticed. She didn't just transform into her Naga form in battle. Most of the time, she was in her Naga form. She didn't like to look like a human. The Naga Shuang said, The Naga is my true body, and the human is my clone. In fact, there is almost no relationship between the two bodies. Apart from the soul and consciousness, even the Xian veins and Sea of Qi are different. Yang Dingtian was completely stunned when he heard this. The Naga Shuang said, The fox demon can also take human form, but to a large extent, it's a kind of transformation. This is because they have very strong human genes in their bodies. But for us Naga, most of our genes are from the fallen divine dragon, followed by the sea serpent and mermaid clan. The rest of our genes are from humans. The term gene was introduced by Yang Dingtian. The Naga Shuang continued, Therefore, our bodies are a combination of sea serpents and divine dragons. The more noble the bloodline, the more we resemble divine dragons. Only the human body is a separate avatar. Yang Dingtian nodded. Naga Shuang said, Then whenever I fight, I'll transform into my Naga form, because it's much, much stronger. When I was in my Naga form, my energy level was the same as when I was in my human form, but the capacity of my Qi Si was many times that of a human. Therefore, at the same level, a single Naga can kill hundreds of human powerhouses. Yang Dingtian began to understand what Naga Shuang was talking about. Naga Shuang said, The Naga's Qi Si is more than hundreds of times that of a human avatar. This means that it's more difficult for a Naga to break through to the demigod level than a human. Therefore, if the Naga is completely sealed, leaving only the human avatar, the difficulty of breaking through to the demigod level will be greatly reduced. Yang Dingtian completely understood what Naga Shuang meant. The Naga Shuang would completely seal her Naga body, leaving only the human avatar. Then, she would copulate with Yang Dingtian, allowing Yang Dingtian to have the body of a demigod as well. However, if that was the case, how could Yang Dingtian break through to the demigod level alone? Naga Shuang's human avatar would also break through to the demigod level. Yang Dingtian told her his idea. Naga Shuang said, Naga is my true body, so there's no such thing as sealing Naga's true body. The only way is to completely seal me, leaving me as a human. Therefore, only you can break through to the demigod level. As soon as she said this, Yang Dingtian was greatly surprised. Seal? Yang Dingtian said in horror. Then will you die? No, Yang Dingtian said. Yang Dingtian asked. Then how do you seal me? Naga Shuang said. Naga is almost invincible. It's impossible to seal her. The only thing that can be done is probably fossilized. Fossilized? Yang Dingtian immediately remembered that there were countless fossils in the ancient sea serpent empire, all of which were masterpieces of Queen Medusa. As long as her gaze shone on them, they would be instantly fossilized. However, could Medusa turn her own kind into fossils? If it's Naga's true body, Medusa won't be able to turn Naga into a fossil. But if it's a human clone, then it's possible. Naga Shuang said, once the human clone is fossilized, the true body will be completely sealed. The entire Naga will be permanently fixed in the form of a human clone, but she won't die. Then, as long as you occupy the throne of darkness and madly devour the energy of a few continents, it's very possible for you to break through to the demigod level within half a year. Because as long as you and I have intercourse, not only will you have the body of a demigod, but your cultivation will also skyrocket. Yang Dingtian was shocked for a while and said, then once you're fossilized, can you still recover in the future? I don't know, Naga Shuang said. Yang Dingtian instantly entered a state of incomprehension. Naga were the greediest and most selfish species. It was impossible for them to have the spirit of sacrifice. At this moment, Naga Shuang's idea was to seal herself into a fossil. This was such a huge sacrifice. How could she possibly say it out loud? It was really bizarre and illogical. No, it's impossible. Yang Dingtian shook his head and said, I don't have the right to sacrifice you to save some people. Oh, Naga Shuang fell silent and responded faintly. Then she didn't insist. Yang Dingtian couldn't help but be stunned. Naga Shuang said, of course I don't want to sacrifice myself. But we need to be honest with each other, and not hide anything from each other. I can read your mind, so you can't hide anything from me. So, I can't hide anything from you. If there's any way, I have to tell you. Whether you do it or not is up to you. Yang Dingtian was surprised. So that's how it is. Then Yang Dingtian said, even if I agree, it's useless because I can't find the thing that sealed you. I can't go to the soul-leaving temple and let Medusa turn you into a fossil, can I? Naga Shuang said, strictly speaking, there is a way. Yang Dingtian couldn't help but be stunned. He asked in surprise, what way? Naga Shuang said, in the ancient Naga Empire, there were always Naga who went against the collective will, so they were punished. However, there were demigods Naga who couldn't be killed. So, the Naga Empire invented a special kind of poison that can seal a Naga clone into a fossil. If I'm not mistaken, there are records of it in your sutra depository. Yang Dingtian was stunned. Shuang really did have the ability to read minds. She even knew that he had the sutra depository. Suddenly, Yang Dingtian said in surprise, you've never heard anyone talk about it, so why do you know so much about the Naga Empire? Naga Shuang said, we have the memory of our race. Once we complete the transformation, we naturally know many things. Yang Dingtian was pleasantly surprised. Then, if this poison is produced on a large scale, can it turn all future Naga into fossils and seal them all? Naga Shuang thought for a while and shook her head. It shouldn't be possible. This kind of poison is extremely precious, and its effect is to react with the deep sea Xian poison in the Naga's body. I don't know if it's effective on future Naga. Moreover, if you want to seal me, I have to take the initiative to drink this poison. You can't force millions of future Naga to drink this poison, can you? Yes, if you have the ability to poison millions of future Naga, how powerful would you be? Another path had been blocked. Yang Dingtian lay down in pain, and Naga Shuang also lay down beside him. Husband, You really don't want to think about it. After you and I have intercourse, you can completely seal me and become a demigod in half a year. Naga Shuang said. That's probably the only way at present. Yang Dingtian shook his head. So what if I become a demigod? I still can't save the human kingdom. Naga Shuang said. At the very least, you can continue to fight and protect your family. Maybe after a few decades or a few hundred years, there will be a day when you can wipe out all the invading Nagas. Yang Dingtian shook his head and said, Don't talk nonsense. Even if I want to seal you, will you obediently accept my seal and sacrifice yourself? Naga Shuang shook her head and said, I don't know. I probably won't. We Naga are all selfish and greedy. We're not that noble. Then, Naga Shuang lay in Yang Dingtian's arms and suddenly said, Speaking of which, I have to thank the soul-leaving palace for creating this apocalyptic crisis. It can temporarily resolve the conflict and rift between the two of us. Otherwise, you probably never want to see me. Naga Shuang was indeed heartless to humans. She was actually rejoicing in this kind of apocalyptic crisis. However, Yang Dingtian did not have the energy to care so much at this time. Naga Shuang looked at Yang Dingtian's face carefully and gently stroked his beard. Immediately after, she realized that there were white hairs on his head. Hence, she extended her hand to pull them out. As a result, she quickly discovered a second and third hairs. She was in no hurry to pull them out. Husband, how old are you? Naga Shuang suddenly asked. I don't know. Maybe 30. Yang Dingtian had really forgotten how old he was. But now you look at least 40 years old, Naga Shuang said. He did look 40 years old. His face was full of vicissitudes, and his beard was almost an inch long. From the beginning of the crisis, he had not stopped for a second. From the ruins to New Naga, back to the ruins, and to the Dongli grasslands, he had traveled countless journeys. Naga wanted to persuade him again. As long as he protected his family, the lives of those humans had nothing to do with him. Why not just give up? However, she didn't say it out loud to prevent the two of them from quarreling again. Yang Dingtian closed his eyes and thought hard, but he still couldn't find any solution. He had really thought of everything, but there was nothing he could do. Suddenly, Naga Shuang said, Husband, your advantage is that you are imaginative. You are not from this world. So if you think beyond the framework of this world, perhaps there is a solution. Suddenly, a bright light flashed in Yang Dingtian's mind. It's very, very imaginative and very bizarre. I wonder if it's possible. Chapter 1162. Shuang, do you belong to the Naga royalty? Yang Dingtian asked. The Naga Shuang shook her head and said, Of course not. Yang Dingtian said, But I saw that when you transformed into a Naga, your whole body was golden. The Naga Shuang said, It's not like being golden is the Naga royalty. The Naga royalty depends on the dragon horns on the head. Dragon horns? Yang Dingtian was puzzled. In our Naga, the more they look like Shenron, the more powerful they are. In terms of appearance, almost every demigod Naga is very similar to a Shenron. The most difficult similarity is the horns. Shuang said, Many Naga descendants of sea snakes have snake horns or flood dragon horns, and many Naga descendants of mermaids simply don't have horns. Only the Naga royalty have horns that are almost identical to Shenron's. Yang Dingtian said, Is the cultivation of the Naga royalty the strongest? The Naga Shuang nodded and said, Of course. Yang Dingtian said, Then do you think my idea is correct? The Naga Shuang said, Go ahead. Yang Dingtian said, The so-called demigod body. The most important thing is the density and space of the energy sea. And the mystic veins are second, right? The Naga Shuang said, Yes. Yang Dingtian said, If you squeeze the energy sea of 10 or 20 demigods together, can you increase the density and space of the energy sea and break through to the demigod level? The Naga Shuang said, No, because nothing can hold it. It will explode directly. Yang Dingtian said, Can the demon core of the Naga royalty hold it? I know that Naga has countless sea of chi, and demon cores are just a part of it. But can a demon core from the Naga royalty contain a demigod sea of chi? The Naga Shuang nodded and said, Of course. The demon nucleus of our Naga is not the Sea of Qi. It is the last reserve of energy, and the replenishment of the Sea of Qi. Of course it can hold it. Yang Dingtian said. In the tombs of the ancient Sea Serpent Empire, there are a lot of sea soul crystals left by the ancestors of the sea serpents. Many of them were close to the level of demigods, the peak of the sea serpents. Naga Shuang's eyes lit up. Yang Dingtian asked, by the way, if you swallow these sea spirit crystals, can you break through to the demigod realm? Naga Shuang said, you can, but I can't. My Naga body needs an astronomical amount of energy to break through to the demigod level. A few hundred sea spirit crystals are not enough. Then Naga Shuanger said, your train of thought is indeed very imaginative. Yang Dingtian took out his Chaos Emperor grade soul sword and handed it to Shuanger, saying, take a look. Can this sword withstand a demigod sea of qi and xian veins? Naga Shuang took the sword. The whole sword was transparent like water. Without the demon core from the Naga royalty, this demigod sea of qi would not exist. Naga Shuang said, but with the demon core from the Naga royalty, there is no need to be afraid of the powerful sea of qi directly exploding, so there are not many requirements for the body of the soul sword. The only requirement is the xian vein essence. Once the attack is launched, the demigod xian qi will rush out. Unless it is demigod Naga's xian veins, it will be impossible to withstand it, and will be directly crushed into ashes. Yang Dingtian said, the xian vein essence of my soul sword is collected from the yin-yang mirror. It connects the land and the earth's core, a total of 1,000 miles. It can withstand the transmission of energy for tens of thousands of miles. I think it should not be weaker than demigod Naga's xian veins. Naga Shuang nodded and said, of course this xian vein essence is extremely strong. It can withstand a demigod's energy attack. Yang Dingtian continued, the body of this artifact sword is made from 999 pieces of 10,000-year-old blood-black gold, and 999 pieces of 10,000-year-old mystic ice-cold gold. They were used to forge 2 emperor-grade yin-yang soul swords and merged into one. It went from a few thousand kilograms to a few dozen kilograms. 1 in 10,000 is many times stronger than a human's body. Can it withstand a demigod's attack? Naga Shuang said, even 1 in 10,000 can't withstand a demigod's energy. However, if the yin-yang soul sword becomes Chaos Emperor grade, it can withstand a demigod's energy. Yang Dingtian said, so it's completely feasible in theory? Naga Shuang closed her eyes. The demigod sea of qi, in the simplest way, was nothing more than the continuous compression of energy. When it reached a certain level, it would directly explode and become a whole new level. In principle, it was no different from ordinary cultivation of the sea of qi. However, without the talent of a demigod, the sea of qi would not be able to withstand such enormous pressure. It would either flow into the abyss of the sea of qi, or explode directly. Yang Dingtian's theory was to stack the sea of qi of many demigods and wrap them in the Naga royalty sword soul. Then, it would undergo a nirvana change and break through to the demigod sea of qi. As far as Naga Shuang could remember, no one had ever tried this. However, in theory, it seemed completely feasible. Then, Naga Shuang said, if this theory works, then as long as I have sex with you and then seal me, you can devour these sea soul crystals and break through to the demigod level in a very short time. You breaking through to the demigod level yourself, and your soul sword breaking through to the demigod level, are 2 completely different concepts. Yang Dingtian stared at her and said, will you obediently let me seal you? If I do, you'll probably bite me to death. Uft. Naga Shuang couldn't help but laugh and said, you're the one who can't bear to seal me. Don't talk about other things. Ever since she had completely transformed, she had never laughed like this, nor had she said anything that sounded like a spoiled child. For a moment, Yang Dingtian didn't know how to reply. After laughing, Naga Shuang said, but have you thought about how to channel these sea soul crystals into the Naga royalty sea of qi? Yes, this was very difficult. What did Yang Dingtian do before? He only collected the xian vein essence, put it into the soul sword, and then channeled the xian vein essence. There was no need to do anything more. The Xian vein essence and the sea soul crystals naturally connected. But now, Yang Dingtian's soul sword already had its own sea of qi. He couldn't directly put the sea soul crystals into it. It would be completely useless. He had to let the soul sword's sea of qi take the initiative to devour the sea soul crystals. This was a difficult task, but it was also not a difficult task. If it was Yang Dingtian, it would be very simple. He would just devour it as energy essence. But the soul sword itself wouldn't devour it on its own. It could absorb energy, but it wouldn't devour formed energy bodies. Therefore, Yang Dingtian had to write a scroll in the divine realm, in a state of spiritual meditation. He had to let his consciousness control the soul sword to devour the sea soul crystals. As for the soul sword scrolls, Yang Dingtian had already written 2 of them. The first one was to use his consciousness to control the soul sword and release the million ancestral swords. The second one was to infuse the dark fire into the soul sword and release the dark fire version of the million ancestral swords. The third scroll was much simpler than the first 2. Large sections of code had already appeared in Yang Dingtian's mind. This devour scroll was easy to write. It didn't even take a few days. The only suspense now was whether the sea soul crystals could help the sea of qi of the emperor-grade soul sword break through the demigod level. Although it was possible in theory, no one knew without practice. Making a prompt decision, Yang Dingtian immediately got up and was about to leave the ruins of the old Naga Empire and go to the ruins of the ancient Sea Serpent Empire. And Naga Shuang'er also followed. Yang Dingtian asked, "Aren't you going to stay here and devour the energy?" Naga Shuang shook her head and said, "It's useless. Anyway, the chance of breaking through the demigod level is very slim. I'll go with you and take a look." Yang Dingtian said, "You can take a look, but you can't be greedy for the sea soul crystals. These sea soul crystals are completely pure now. At least infuse a little consciousness into them, and they will recognize you as their master. Once they recognize you as their master, I can't use my soul sword." Yang Dingtian's words were very impolite. Ever since he knew that Naga Shuang was able to read his mind, he had been very straightforward. Naga Shuang didn't seem to be angry. She said, "My greed is to break through the demigod level. If I can't break through the demigod level, what's the use of devouring such little energy?" Then, the 2 of them left the ruins of the old Naga Empire. After a few days and nights, Yang Dingtian once again returned to the ancient Sea Serpent Empire. Then, he went to the sea burial land behind the ruins of the demon capital. Under the huge mountain range, there was a crack thousands of miles deep. In the bottom of the crack, all the powerful sea serpents in history were buried. Every top powerhouse of the Sea Serpent clan would return their energy to the sea before they died, so that their descendants could enjoy it. After being buried at sea, their Xian veins opened up and turned into crystal tunnels. Their energy sea solidified and turned into sea soul crystals. Yang Dingtian and Naga Shuang followed the deep crack and kept going down, down, down. After 3,000 miles, they reached the end of the abyss. This place was made of incomparably hard crystal stones. Everything around him was made of crystal stones of pure energy. They were sparkling and translucent, just like a crystal palace. Yang Dingtian began to look for the whirlpools below, because every whirlpool represented a person buried at sea, and a sea soul crystal. There were really many whirlpools. The abyss under the sea burial land was also very big. It was more than a few thousand miles deep. Yang Dingtian and Naga Shuang searched along the way. A few, a dozen, dozens, hundreds. No need to look anymore. Naga Shuang said, "There are hundreds of sea soul crystals. It's definitely enough as long as your theory is correct." Then, Yang Dingtian used the emperor-grade soul sword to dig one of the whirlpools and collect the sea soul crystals inside. The collection was very simple. He just needed to inject his Xian Qi and consciousness. Subsequently, this jellyfish-like sea soul crystal, which contained extremely powerful energy, continued to float and follow Yang Dingtian, not leaving him by a single step. And as expected, every person buried at sea was the top cultivation of the sea serpents, close to the demigod level. Yang Dingtian collected 3 sea soul crystals that were close to the demigod level. Then, he left the ruins of the ancient sea serpent empire and went to the human countries. Next, he would enter the meditation world with the demon fox high priest to write the devouring scroll of the soul sword. These 3 sea spirit gems were used for experiments. If he succeeded, he would not break through to the demigod level. Instead, his soul sword would break through to the demigod level. Chapter 1163. A few days later, Yang Dingtian brought Naga Shuang into the Empire of Darkness again. At this time, there were no less than 1 million people living in the Empire of Darkness. However, there were still countless human kingdoms and demon foxes from the Little Western Paradise. Yang Dingtian and Naga Shuang entered the Celestial Palace in the Skirich imperial capital. Shuang, try sitting on the throne of darkness, Yang Dingtian said. Although the throne of darkness was useless at the moment, it would be better if he could gain control of the entire Empire of Darkness. Naga Shuang walked up the throne of darkness step by step. Her body grew bigger and bigger. When she finally reached the throne of darkness, she was already several hundred meters tall. Then she sat on it. Instantly, a beam of light shone down from the dome and enveloped Naga Shuang's head. It was as if this was a kind of spiritual authentication. After a few seconds, Naga Shuang's body slowly lit up. Can I? Yang Dingtian asked. Naga Shuang said, It's very strange. I have gained control of a part of the Empire of Darkness, but not all of it. Yang Dingtian asked, What kind of control do you have? Naga Shuang said, I can control the specific refining formations and condense them. I can devour energy, but I can't use the highest authority of the Throne of Darkness. Yang Dingtian asked, What is the highest authority of the Throne of Darkness? Naga Shuang said, Using the Skirich imperial capital, releasing energy attacks, building energy barriers, and so on. Yang Dingtian understood. Naga Shuang's current level on the Throne of Darkness was equivalent to the Devil Queen's level. The Empire of Darkness was discovered by the Demon King Wentian. His spirit had signed some kind of spiritual contract with the Empire of Darkness, so he had the highest authority of the Throne of Darkness. Then he divided the authority of the Throne of Darkness. The Devil Queen had the second highest authority, while Dongli, Princess Mudan, and the others had the third highest authority. All of this was divided according to the level of the evil spirits. Of course, after the Demon King Wentian lost the primordial evil spirit, he still had the authority of the Throne of Darkness. This proved that the authority of the Empire of Darkness was not tied to the evil spirits. The so-called authority according to the level of the evil spirits was just a division of authority given by the Demon King Wentian. That was therefore, the Devil Queen's authority of the Empire of Darkness had the second highest authority. Yang Dingtian asked, How's the energy devoured on the Throne of Darkness? Naga Shuang said, The concentration is no less than that of the old Naga Empire's ruins, but it's only a strand of energy, not as much as in the ruins. In the core of the old Naga Empire's ruins, the entire energy cave was filled with xianqi crystals that were hundreds of thousands of times more concentrated. They poured into the body through every inch of the Xian meridians. Here, the Empire of Darkness's Skirich imperial capital's energy formation condensed countless xianqi energy into a strand and poured it into the body. Therefore, the amount of xianqi energy entering the body per unit of time was naturally much smaller. In other words, devouring the energy on the Throne of Darkness will allow you to break through to the demigod level, Yang Dingtian said. Yes, Naga Shuang said, but it will take more than 500 years. Yang Dingtian was speechless. Naga Shuang said, However, if you have sex with me and seal me, you will be able to break through to the demigod level in less than 10 years while sitting on the Throne of Darkness. Yang Dingtian couldn't be bothered with Naga Shuang's words. Naga Shuang continued, Of course, the energy injected into the Throne of Darkness is darker and more evil. Yang Dingtian asked, Will you be affected? Naga Shuang sneered. What do you think? Naga are the darkest and most evil species. It will be more painful for you to bear this energy, but I will gladly endure it. Yang Dingtian stopped talking and said, Alright, then you can stay here and devour the energy. Go find the demon fox high priest. Yang Dingtian found the demon fox high priest. The first thing she saw was the 3 sea soul crystals that were following closely behind Yang Dingtian. They were like jellyfish and were truly beautiful. Miss Demon Fox, we have another mission, Yang Dingtian said. Speak, the demon fox high priest said happily. This time, the invasion of the new Naga Empire not only caused the entire human kingdom to panic, but also the Mermaid Empire and the Little Western Paradise. As the spiritual leader of Little Western Paradise, the High Priest Association acted like they were doing research every day, as if they could find a way to defeat the enemy. But in reality, everyone knew that their efforts were useless. They didn't even know what to do. Every day, they could only pretend to be busy and watch the days pass by. Yang Dingtian said, "Let's go into meditation again and write a devour scroll for my soul sword. You know that my soul sword Chi Ocean Wall is the demon core of Naga royalty. There is an ancient sea snake ancestor's demigod sea spirit sea inside." The demon fox high priest said, "But the Naga royalty demon core seems to have disappeared." "No, it is still here." Yang Dingtian took out his artifact sword and said, "Look carefully. There is still a faint golden radiance seeping out from the sea soul crystal." The demon fox high priest looked carefully, and it was indeed so. Yang Dingtian said, "My theory is to let my soul sword continuously devour demigod sea spirit crystals. Dozens, hundreds of demigod sea spirit crystals will all condense in the demigod sea spirit sea. When it is crowded to the extreme, it will undergo a nirvana change and break through to the demigod realm. The Naga royalty demon core is Naga's reserve demigod sea spirit sea. It can completely withstand the power of a demigod, or even higher." The demon fox high priest was overjoyed and said, "In theory, this is completely feasible." Yang Dingtian replied, "That's right. Furthermore, this devouring scroll is much simpler than the 2 scrolls that we wrote previously." The demon fox high priest said, "That's right, I have a rough idea now. I only need a simulator and a soul sword devour scroll. Then the 2 scrolls will be combined, and it will be done. We already have the simulator, and it will be done after some slight modifications. I guarantee that this devour scroll won't even need 2 days." Afterward, Demon Fox Grand Priest didn't say anything else, and immediately dragged Yang Dingtian into a secret room. She then stripped off all his clothes. Yang Dingtian was speechless. This Demon Fox High Priest was always like this. Once she entered meditation, she would definitely strip off her clothes. This time, she did not even use the crystal energy formation to enter the meditation world. Because Yang Dingtian and the Demon Fox High Priest were already too familiar with each other, the trust between them was unreserved. The 2 of them sat cross-legged on the ground and looked at each other. The Demon Fox High Priest said, "This time we will do as usual. You enter my world." With ease, the Fox Grand Priest activated her spiritual technique and directly entered the deep meditation world. And Yang Dingtian entered the Demon Fox High Priest's meditation world without any hindrance. In this deep layer of the illusion, Yi Zichen was stunned. The 2 of them immediately divided the work. Yang Dingtian took out the simulator code from before and slightly modified it. And the Demon Fox High Priest wrote the Devour Scroll. Even in the meditation world, Yang Dingtian only used a few days to completely modify the entire simulator. Then, he casually glanced at the Demon Fox High Priest's progress. About 1/3 of the basic framework was already completed. Yang Dingtian joined in without any hindrance and continued to build the framework with her. This framework was equivalent to the outline of the entire scroll. After a few days in the meditation world, the entire framework was completed. The framework was completed, and the next step was to fill in the paragraphs. For the first time, Yang Dingtian and the Demon Fox High Priest were very bitter, as they wrote small paragraphs one by one. Furthermore, they had to write and modify it. It was extremely slow, and now countless paragraphs were easily drawn out. A paragraph with tens of thousands of lines of code, after some slight modifications, was directly used. Even though the scroll created in this way was not simple, It was very fast. In this way, in the meditation world, the entire soul skill Devour scroll was completed in just a month. After that, after another few days, the simulator and the Devour scroll were combined. Suddenly, the entire scroll was completed. It was still the demon fox high priest. In the meditation world, she used her spiritual power and Qianqi to write the scroll. In the meditation world, it only took 3 days to complete the writing. When the two of them woke up, there was a complete Devour scroll in the hands of the demon fox high priest. The moment she woke up, the demon fox high priest went to look at the hourglass. 20 hours, less than 20 hours. The demon fox high priest was pleasantly surprised. This time, we finished writing the scroll in less than a day. Following that, the demon fox high priest said, "But I still have to blame you. You were careless and did not enter deep enough meditation. If not, you could have been faster." Yang Dingtian was speechless. 20 hours was fast enough. Following that, Yang Dingtian controlled his soul sword and injected his Qianqi into the scroll. Then the scroll turned into ashes inch by inch. Yang Dingtian controlled the soul sword and learned a new soul skill, Devour. After a short 15 minutes, Yang Dingtian's soul sword had completely grasped the Devour soul skill. After that, the most important moment arrived. Could the soul sword use the Devour soul skill to devour the sea soul crystal into its own sea of vital energy? Yang Dingtian sat cross-legged on the ground and closed his eyes. He started to use his consciousness to control his soul sword and unleash the Devour soul skill. Originally, the demon fox high priest should not be beside him at this time. She should not be disturbed. However, there was no doubt that she would not leave. She had to watch everything. Furthermore, she and Yang Dingtian had an absolute tacit understanding. There would not be any disturbances. Whoosh! Yang Dingtian controlled his soul sword to unleash the Devour skill. Instantly, countless light figures floated out from the soul sword. The number of entrances in a person's Xian meridians was the same as the number of entrances in the soul sword. These countless light figures flew out from the soul sword Xian meridians and wrapped around the sea soul crystal. Following that, the energy of the sea soul crystal entered the soul sword sea of vital energy through these light figures. It really works. It really works. Chapter 1164. The first step had been a success. The soul sword that had learned the Devour scroll started to devour the powerful and pure energy in the sea spirit crystal, just as Yang Dingtian had expected. It was just like how Yang Dingtian was devouring the energy essence. However, this Chaos Emperor grade soul sword's aptitude was much stronger than Yang Dingtian's. It had the Sea of Qi world with the Naga royalty, the 1,000-mile Xian meridian essence, and the Emperor grade chaotic body. In less than 3 minutes, the energy of the sea spirit crystal, that was close to a demigod, was completely devoured. Moreover, it was used for cultivation, not for combat. Because before devouring the sea spirit crystal, the soul sword's battle Qianqi was full. After devouring one, the soul sword started to devour the second sea spirit crystal without stopping. Then it devoured the third sea spirit crystal. It took less than 10 minutes to devour 3 sea spirit crystals that were close to a demigod. Success! The demon fox priest suddenly pounced forward and hugged Yang Dingtian's neck, kissing him hard on the face. She was even more excited than Yang Dingtian. It was as if the darkness of the apocalypse had been torn apart in an instant. It was as if light had completely shone in. Yang Dingtian, do you know the significance of this success? The demon fox priest said. If this soul sword breaks through to a demigod, it means that to a certain extent, you have surpassed the ancestor, Mr. Shiwu Piaoyan. This can not only be used to defend against the invasion of New Naga. This is a revolution of martial arts, a revolution of civilization. Yang Dingtian understood what the demon fox priest said. On Earth, the strength of humans did not come from their own martial arts, but from the use of tools. Many people said that China's martial arts declined in the Ming and Qing dynasties. Because of the rise of guns, martial arts became useless. No matter how high one's martial arts were, they could not stop bullets. Even though the martial arts of the chaotic world far exceeded that of Earth, more than 10,000 times, or even hundreds of thousands of times. But the principle was indeed similar. In the past, the weapons in the hands of the chaotic world martial artists were always auxiliary, and their killing power could never surpass the martial artists themselves. As for Yang Dingtian's soul sword, its cultivation and lethality far surpassed Yang Dingtian's, especially now that it could break through to the demigod level. This meant that in the future, humans did not need to cultivate their martial arts to a high level. The tools in his hands could break through to the demigod level. This was indeed a revolution, a subversion of the martial arts civilization. Of course, Yang Dingtian's soul sword was also very special, because the demon core of the Naga royalty was almost unique. However, who could guarantee that the demon cores of the Naga royalty would not be replaced when the crystal civilization developed to a certain extent? It wasn't just the Naga royalty demon cores, the profound vein essence, and even the sea soul crystal that served as the soul sword sea of chi could be replaced by a crystal energy array. Once the internal fission of the crystal was completed, the fusion research would be completed. In that case, humans could rely on tools to break through the realm that only demigod Naga could break through. Therefore, although the soul sword in Yang Dingtian's hand seemed to have nothing to do with the crystal civilization, it was definitely the dawn of a new civilization. Next, Yang Dingtian did not go to the Naga Shuang. Instead, he went to Queen Poisa, because she was now the only person who could represent the ancient Sea Serpent Empire. Strictly speaking, the Sea Soul crystals of the Sea Serpent Empire should be her property. This time, Yang Dingtian wanted to take all the Sea Soul crystals, so in theory, he needed Queen Poisa's consent. Although this move seemed a bit hypocritical and superfluous, Yang Dingtian still did it. Queen Poisa, of course, agreed to Yang Dingtian without hesitation. Then Yang Dingtian left the Empire of Darkness without stopping, and went to the ruins of the ancient Sea Serpent Empire again. Naga Shuang was still devouring qi on the throne of darkness. A few days and nights later, Yang Dingtian once again arrived at the huge burial of the sea mountains behind the devil capital. He flew down along the chasm abyss. After flying for 3,000 miles, he came to the end of the abyss again. In the next few days and nights, Yang Dingtian used the Emperor-grade soul sword to chisel one whirlpool after another in the burial of the sea. In each whirlpool, there were maze-like tunnels, all formed by the Sea Serpent clan's Xian veins. Each maze was equivalent to the tomb of the Sea Serpent ancestors. At the end of each maze, there was a Sea Soul crystal. It should be said that almost all of them had a Sea Soul crystal, because occasionally, there would be one or two whirlpools that did not have a Sea Soul crystal. That was because there was a mistake in the process of the burial of the Sea Serpent ancestors. So the Sea Serpent ancestors did not successfully condense and directly dissipated. There were also some that were too old, and these solidified Sea Soul crystals were once again returned to the sea bit by bit. However, 90% of the whirlpools had Sea Soul crystals in them. Yang Dingtian did not know how many Sea Soul crystals he should take at one time to break through to the demigod realm. So he rounded it up and took out 100 Sea Soul crystals that were close to the demigod realm. Then, he left the chasm abyss, and even the ruins of the Devil Crystal City. Instead, he entered the dark void between the dark matter and the ruins of the old Naga Empire. Because breaking through to the Saint Grade could cause earth-shattering changes, then breaking through to the demigod realm would be even more shocking. Yang Dingtian was afraid that the drastic changes would cause the ruins of the Devil Capital to be destroyed, so he entered the void. In the endless void, Yang Dingtian released the Sea Soul crystals from the space ring. In an instant, 100 Sea Soul crystals that were close to the demigod realm surrounded Yang Dingtian in the middle. This scene looked very dreamy. Almost every Sea Soul crystal wanted to be the closest to Yang Dingtian, so every part of his body was occupied by a Sea Soul crystal. Every Sea Soul crystal was like a transparent jellyfish, trembling slightly, as if there were countless stars in it. More than one person had said that every sea of Qi was a separate space world. The depths of this space were like the starry sky of the universe with countless galaxies. It was indeed so, and the position of the galaxies in every sea soul crystal was different. Every single one of them was beautiful and magical. At this moment, Yang Dingtian had more doubts about the saying that man could conquer nature. It seemed that if Yang Dingtian broke through to the demigod realm with the soul sword, it would be incomparably great. But in fact, whether it was the body of the soul sword, the mystic meridian essence, the demon core of the Naga royalty, or the sea soul crystals in front of him, they were all products of the chaotic world, and Yang Dingtian only went to find them. This feeling only lasted for a moment. Then, Yang Dingtian sat cross-legged in the void, and began to use his consciousness to control the soul sword, and use the devouring soul skill. Suddenly, countless light shadows flew out from every mystic meridian exit of the soul sword again, entangling a sea soul crystal, and beginning to devour it. One every 3 minutes. Later, one every 2 minutes. Then one every minute. The speed of the soul sword's devouring became faster and faster. With the devouring of the sea soul crystals, the tip of the transparent soul sword released a ray of light that became brighter and brighter. When it devoured 50 sea soul crystals, this soul sword had become extremely bright. Especially the position of the Sea of Qi at the hilt. The golden light was completely breathtaking. It was even more golden than the previous complete demon core of the Naga royalty. And the light of the entire soul sword had already made Yang Dingtian almost unable to open his eyes. The light of a mere treasure sword was like the sun, completely illuminating the dark void of 1,000 miles. Moreover, it was still getting brighter and brighter. Yang Dingtian could no longer open his eyes. Of course, he couldn't see that in the soul sword, there were countless mystic meridian essences, each with a huge amount of energy crazily shuttling back and forth. In this treasure sword, there were more than 10,000 mystic meridian essences, each of which was born from heaven and earth, and the energy it could contain was countless times more than that of humans. It was getting brighter and brighter. In the end, it was so bright that Yang Dingtian had completely disappeared. It was so bright that it made people scared out of their wits. Yang Dingtian was really afraid that the soul sword wouldn't be able to withstand it, and would directly turn into ashes. Or when he broke through to the demigod realm, the drastic change in the trembling sound would tear Yang Dingtian into pieces. It was extremely bright. Boom! In an instant, the dark void of tens of thousands of miles was completely as bright as day. Then the devouring stopped. The Chaos Emperor Grade Soul Sword lost all its light. The entire void turned into complete darkness. The connection between Yang Dingtian and the Soul Sword had also been lost. Yang Dingtian was shocked and desperately tried to sense the soul sword, but there was no response. Could it be that the soul sword was dead? Yang Dingtian summoned it again and again. Everything was silent, and Yang Dingtian felt a chill run down his spine. Suddenly, a ray of light lit up from the Sea of Qi at the hilt. Then more and more light and more and more. Finally, the light filled the entire soul sword. And it was all golden light. When Yang Dingtian tried to sense the soul sword again, he immediately felt an earth-shattering energy. Energy that could move mountains and fill seas. Energy that could reverse heaven and earth. He knew clearly. It was a complete success. His Chaos Emperor Grade Soul Sword had completely broken through to the demigod realm. There was no doubt that this was an incomparably great moment. He didn't break through to the demigod realm. Nagashuang didn't break through to the demigod realm. But his soul sword broke through to the demigod realm. This was something that even Shiwu Piaoyan couldn't do. Just when Yang Dingtian was in shock, countless energy shadows flew out from the soul sword and wrapped around the remaining 20 sea spirit crystals. It continued to devour the energy of the sea spirit crystals. Moreover, it devoured 20 sea spirit crystals at the same time. This meant that this soul sword didn't break through to the demigod realm. It had to continue to devour and break through. But it was normal because this was the demon core of the Naga royalty, the Sea of Qi of the Naga royalty. Breaking through to the demigod realm was just the beginning for Naga. There were more powerful existences above the demigod realm. Countless ancient Nagas had spent their entire lives fighting for the sake of breaking through to the deity level, although they didn't succeed until they died. Chapter 1165. Young Dingtian had no idea what the levels after breaking through to the demigod realm were. All he knew was that his Chaos Emperor grade soul sword had devoured the sea spirit crystals of the remaining 20 demigods in a matter of minutes. Next, young Dingtian was faced with another choice. Should he let the soul sword devour the remaining sea spirit crystals? First of all, in order to stop the invasion of New Naga, the soul sword had to be as strong as possible. However, if young Dingtian wanted to break through to the demigod realm, he would probably need these sea spirit crystals. Most importantly, young Dingtian had no idea about the levels after the demigod realm. Therefore, he did not know how strong the soul sword would be after devouring more demigod sea spirit crystals. While hesitating, young Dingtian kept the Chaos Emperor grade soul sword. Just by holding it in his hand, he could feel an extremely powerful energy. Stepping on the soul sword, he returned to the ruins of the Sea Serpent Empire. Whoosh! The soul sword's flying speed immediately gave young Dingtian a huge fright. It was too shocking. Previously, the speed had reached tens of thousands of miles per hour. Now it had increased by many times. Fortunately, this was an absolute void. Otherwise, young Dingtian would not be able to withstand the pressure and friction caused by the rapid flight. After a while, he reached the end of this void. Young Dingtian released his space technique and created a space door. He then jumped out of this dark void and entered the ruins of the ancient Sea Serpent Empire. When young Dingtian arrived at the palace of the Sea Serpent Empire again, he saw Naga Shuang already sitting there. "Did you succeed?" Shuang asked. Young Dingtian nodded. Naga Shuang immediately took the sword excitedly and felt the powerful energy in it. Instantly, her face was filled with fascination. The demigod realm? She had dreamed of reaching it. In order to reach the demigod realm, she even fell out with young Dingtian. Now, she had not reached the demigod realm, and the hope of breaking through was very slim. Even if she devoured the energy peacefully on the throne of darkness, it would take hundreds of years, or even longer to break through. Unexpectedly, young Dingtian's soul sword broke through to the demigod realm first. Young Dingtian asked, "How many levels are there after the demigod realm?" Naga Shuang looked at young Dingtian and couldn't help but reveal a trace of ridicule. "Our Naga race doesn't have ranks," young Dingtian asked. "Then after breaking through to the demigod realm, will Naga's cultivation and chi vessels still have a breakthrough?" "Of course," Naga Shuang said. Young Dingtian asked, "If I let my soul sword devour 100 sea soul crystals, what level will it reach?" Naga Shuang said, "You want to use this soul sword to kill the future Naga clan that is about to invade, right?" Young Dingtian nodded. Naga Shuang closed her eyes and said, "My husband, the analogy I'm going to make is not appropriate, but I've done my best to divide the relevant levels." Young Dingtian nodded. Naga Shuang asked, "Your current cultivation is at the 24th level, right?" Young Dingtian nodded. Naga Shuang said, "Then do you know what level the Demon King will be at in the end?" Young Dingtian said, "Level 30? No." Naga Shuang said, "It's close to level 50. Fuck." Young Dingtian was surprised. The so-called demigod realm was level 50, which was twice as high as his current level. Young Dingtian couldn't help but remember that from level 9 to 9 stars, they were all infinite grandmasters. This was because this was already the limit of the current human cultivation. Who knew that there was a huge difference between level 9 and level 15? But everyone called them infinite grandmasters. Naga Shuang continued, "In fact, this division is still very unreasonable, but to make it clearer, I reluctantly divided it like this. Then do you know what my current cultivation level is?" Young Dingtian said, "Level 45? Naga Shuang shook her head and said, "Level 39. Young Dingtian was surprised again. Naga Shuang's 39th step was able to suppress the Demon King's nearly 50th step. That was simply too shocking. Shuang said, "If the Demon King didn't have the Chaos Emperor armor back then, I could easily kill him without even using up a third of my celestial chi." Young Dingtian was speechless again. Truly it was better to be born strong than to be strong. Naga Shuang continued. "But if the Demon King broke through to the demigod realm, then I would be no match for him, and would be defeated by him. So even though he's only an inch away from becoming a demigod, it's definitely one step from heaven and one step from hell. Yang Dingtian nodded. Naga Shuang held onto Yang Dingtian's treasure sword and said, "Husband, your current soul sword should be at the 50th rank." Yang Dingtian said, "Then, how many levels does the divine realm correspond to?" Naga Shuang rolled her eyes at Yang Dingtian and said, "Infinite." Yang Dingtian asked again, "Then what's the highest cultivation level of the ancient Naga?" Naga Shuang said, "It's indescribable. You can think of it as level 99 or level 999, because it's indescribable and meaningless." Yang Dingtian understood. Naga Shuang continued, "Husband, most of the sea soul crystals in the sea burial ground are the sea serpent clan's most powerful experts who have lived for hundreds of thousands or millions of years. They have all reached the limit of the sea serpent clan's cultivation level, infinitely close to level 50. You should have swallowed energy essences. It's very difficult to break through level 50 with energy essences close to level 50. Yang Dingtian nodded. He had swallowed countless energy essences. In order to break through to level 15, he had to use energy essences close to level 16. Naga Shuang said, "Your soul sword could be seen as a 49th rank 99. You had to swallow 100 sea spirit crystals of the same rank to make your soul sword reach the 50th rank. Now that your soul sword has become a demigod, no matter how many sea spirit crystals you swallow, it won't help." Yang Dingtian immediately said sadly, "God, I could have broken through to the demigod level with 80 sea soul crystals, but I swallowed 100 and wasted 20 of them." Naga Shuang was speechless. Yang Dingtian said, "That's good. I don't have to waste these sea soul crystals anymore, and I don't have to make a difficult choice." Naga Shuang said, "Husband, then do you know how many later generations of Naga can kill with this semi-god soul sword of yours?" Yang Dingtian said, "I don't know. I don't even know the difference between the future Naga and the sea serpent clan." Naga Shuang said, "The cultivation level of these future Naga is almost the same as that of the sea serpent clan. They are all infinitely close to the demigod level, but they can never break through to the demigod level. However, they are more powerful than the sea serpent clan because they have stronger energy attributes. They can change the world and realize countless attack methods. They can freely switch chi attacks of all attributes. They have a thicker sea of energy, which is about 9 times more powerful than that of the sea serpent clan. In other words, although these future Naga were not real demigod Naga, they were much more powerful than the sea serpent clan and the mermaid clan." Yang Dingtian asked, "Do they have an invincible body?" "No," Naga Shuang said. "This is an attribute that only the real Naga has. Of course, this attribute is only relative." Yang Dingtian said, "Then tell me directly, can my semi-divine soul sword kill the future Naga?" "Yes," Naga Shuang said. "If you exhaust all your chi, you can kill 2. 2. That was too little," Yang Dingtian asked. "Then if I transfer the 3 mysterious fire lightning to the soul sword and exhaust all the chi of the soul sword, how many future Naga can I kill?" Naga Shuang closed her eyes and began to do complicated calculations. "About 49, Naga Shuang said. This number made Yang Dingtian somewhat overjoyed at this unexpected turn of events. Naga Shuang said, "But don't forget, darling, the mysterious fire lightning is slow and fixed. These future Naga can escape. They can easily get out of the killing range of the mysterious fire lightning." "That's right. No one would stand there stupidly and let you hit them. Even if Yang Dingtian released the mysterious fire lightning himself, it would take at least a few seconds. With the soul sword in between, it might take even longer." Originally, after the soul sword broke through to the demigod level, Yang Dingtian planned to enter New Naga again and kill Queen Hai Xian, Wentian, Bo Yiming, and all the sea snake descendants of the Naga elders. Then he would completely destroy the Greater Space Technique scroll. This way, he might be able to stop the invasion. However, after the soul sword broke through to the demigod level, it could only kill 2 future Naga. Although the three mysterious fire lightning could kill more, it had strict requirements. The enemy had to stand still and let you kill them. How could this be possible? Then, Yang Dingtian suddenly thought of combining the first half of the greater space technique with the three mysterious fire lightning. In other words, he would first use the dark vortex to create a black hole to isolate the space. Then, the three mysterious fire lightning would be created in this isolated space. In addition, throughout the entire process, Yang Dingtian would be invisible. This way, he would be able to release the three mysterious fire lightning without anyone noticing. By the time the enemy discovered it, it would be too late. This way, he might be able to kill Bo Yiming and the others in one fell swoop. Yang Dingtian told her this idea in theory. The Naga Shuang thought for a while and nodded. This theory is possible, but you have to write another scroll. This scroll is much more complicated. Yang Dingtian nodded. I know. This scroll is the soul skill, mysterious fire lightning. As for the isolated space, I can use it. So it's not complicated. The Naga Shuang said. If we do it separately, it's indeed much simpler. But there's a prerequisite. You have to combine with me. Yang Dingtian fell silent. That's right. This way, he had to combine with the Naga Shuang. Only then would he have an indestructible body and be able to escape from New Naga. Chapter 1166. When it came to this topic, both of them fell into silence. In the end, it was the Naga Shuang who broke the silence. If you don't care about the future Medusa Shiman Ningning, I can do it. Yang Dingtian couldn't help but look at her. She had always insisted on becoming a demigod before joining with Yang Dingtian. The Naga Shuang sighed. The ruins of the Naga Empire have already disintegrated. I have lost the possibility of becoming a demigod quickly, or even for the rest of my life. That kind of persistence from before would be meaningless. Yang Dingtian said, That's not all. Half of your energy will be transferred to me. Furthermore, from now on, half of the energy you devour every day will belong to me. The Naga Shuang shook her head. If I can't become a demigod, it doesn't matter. After joining with you, I will drop from level 39 to level 32. But so what? The Medusa who can kill me can still kill me. And those future Naga can't do anything to me. Yang Dingtian said. Then if you go to New Naga with me, and after I kill Bo Yiming and the others with the three mysterious fire, you can immediately escape with me. Can you succeed? The Naga Shuang pursed her lips and said, Of course I can escape easily by myself. But if I join you, not only can I not escape with you, but I will also be trapped. Don't forget, I am only level 39, and they have countless level 50. Even if my Xian Qi is dozens of times thicker than theirs, dozens of future Naga, who are close to level 50 are enough to kill me. Yang Dingtian closed his eyes and fell into silence. Should he enter New Naga again and kill Bo Yiming, and all the people who saw the greater space spell scroll, including Queen Hyexan? Yes, he still had to go, even though he might not succeed. But this was the only way to stop the invasion of New Naga at the moment. No matter what, he had to give it a try. He couldn't just sit and wait for death. If he had decided to go, he would have to combine with Naga to escape. Otherwise, it would be a pipe dream to dig it out from the countless powerful Naga of the later generations. Yang Dingtian stared at Naga Shuang and said, If you don't regret it, then I'm sorry that I have to take half of your energy. Naga Shuang's delicate body trembled slightly, but she nodded and said, All right, let's do that. Let's go back. You and Demon Fox High Priest will write the scroll again. If we can successfully make the soul swords release the mystic fire lightning, and if we can successfully use the isolated space to hide the mystic fire lightning, we can begin to combine and enter New Naga to kill Bo Yi. All right. Yang Dingtian nodded. Following this, the two of them left and returned to the human countries. When they entered the Empire of Darkness again, there were twice as many people as before. Under the command of Vulture, Wu Yu and the others, an endless stream of humans and demon foxes were transferred into the Empire of Darkness. The space within the Empire of Darkness was big enough. There were countless huge castles inside. Each castle was like a city, and there was no problem for hundreds of thousands of people to live in. The most important thing, the air was also fine. The entire Empire of Darkness was a huge energy array. It could continuously extract air from the outside and store it in the castles. The biggest problem, food, was also not a big problem. This was all thanks to the Empire of Darkness. In order to prepare for the War of Destruction, the Demon City Merchant Palace, which served the evil ways, had stored food for hundreds of years. In a special space like the Empire of Darkness, the food would not rot at all. Unexpectedly, the new War of Destruction did not require food at all. The only consumption was to support Queen Hyxion's Naga Empire. The granary of the Empire of Darkness fed tens of millions of people in the Naga Empire for more than a year. However, only a fraction of the food was consumed. Moreover, the human countries still had an endless supply of food, fresh water, meat, and fruits transported into the Empire of Darkness. Therefore, it was not a problem for the Empire of Darkness to feed tens of millions of people. The most important thing was order and the hearts of the people. The retreat this time would undoubtedly cause a huge panic. However, all of this was left to the army of the Council of Light. Under the suppression and maintenance of tens of millions of soldiers, order could be maintained. The key was whether retreating into the Empire of Darkness was useful. Could new Naga fight their way in? This was unknown. Yang Dingtian met the Demon Fox Priest again. The first thing she said was, "Let me see the Soul Sword." When she received the Emperor-grade Soul Sword, the Demon Fox Priest exclaimed. Previously, Yang Dingtian's Soul Sword was only completely transparent. But now, Yang Dingtian's Chaos Emperor-grade Soul Sword was completely invisible. It has already become a demigod? The Demon Fox Priest asked. Yang Dingtian nodded. Instantly, the Demon Fox Priest was extremely excited. She caressed the Emperor-grade Soul Sword in a daze. Becoming a demigod was the eternal belief of the Demon Fox tribe. Now a Soul Sword had done it. After caressing it for 15 minutes, the Demon Fox Priest said, "I have a part to play in this, right?" "Of course," Yang Dingtian said. "From the beginning until now, I have been unable to leave your help." The Demon Fox Priest smiled at Yang Dingtian and said, "What do you want me to do next?" Yang Dingtian said, "There is a new scroll. Speak." The Demon Fox Priest was very enthusiastic. Yang Dingtian said, "The Soul Sword version of the mysterious Fire Lightning Scroll. That is the Spatial Rending Fire, the Devil Spirit Demon Fire, and the Million Spirit Demon Fire are injected into the Soul Sword. The Soul Sword will provide them with mystical energy. After that they will become chaotic. Finally, they will clash and create the three mysterious fire lightning." The Demon Fox Priest closed her eyes and said, "The biggest problem is that the three mysterious fires belong to you. They don't belong to the Soul Sword. They aren't in the Soul Sword Sea of Aura either." Yang Dingtian nodded and said, "Yes." The Demon Fox Priest said, "Therefore, this is basically borrowing the Soul Sword's mystical energy. It's not a pure Soul Sword version of the mysterious fire lightning." "Yes," Yang Dingtian said. The Demon Fox Priest said, "It's a little troublesome, Yang Dingtian." "Yes, it's a little troublesome," Yang Dingtian said. "If it's just a soul skill, the mysterious fire lightning scroll will be easy. I can finish it in less than a day." The Demon Fox Priest said, "But it's not that difficult, right?" Yang Dingtian said, "Yes, it's just that we have to choose a direction. The first direction is for the mysterious fire to enter the Soul Sword Sea of Aura. The second direction is purely borrowing the mysterious fire." The Demon Fox Priest said, "The first direction is split into 2 steps. It's difficult at first, but it's easy later. The second direction is only 1 step, but it's very difficult." Yang Dingtian said, "Yes, according to your sharp senses, which direction do you think we should choose?" The Demon Fox Priest said, "The second direction can be solved purely by the martial way wisdom of the godly realm. The first direction is easier in theory, but it's not within the godly realm." "Alright, the second direction it is," Yang Dingtian said. The Demon Fox Priest did not say anything and closed the door. After that, she pulled Yang Dingtian and used her spiritual technique to enter the deepest level of meditation. She started to write a new scroll, borrowing the soul sword's mystical energy to enter the master's mysterious fire. This sounded very simple, and the code would definitely be very short. However, it was the most difficult scroll that Yang Dingtian had ever written. It could be said that if he did not have the experience of writing the previous 3 times, he would not even dare to think about completing this scroll. There were even many theories that could not be analyzed. The master's mysterious fire and the soul sword's mystical energy were completely independent entities. The only thing that connected the two was Yang Dingtian's consciousness. Hence, even though Yang Dingtian and the demon fox priest were full of confidence, in reality, it was very difficult. Moreover, there had never been a scroll like this. Why? Because the master's mystical energy was always higher than the soul sword. There was no need to borrow it. Now that Yang Dingtian, this weirdo, the cultivation level of the soul sword was so much higher than the master's, there was a need for this. Next, Yang Dingtian and the demon fox priest were in the deepest level of meditation. They thought and wrote day and night. In the beginning, most of the time, they were thinking and could not even set the framework, because they had to think of the theory behind it. In the meditation world, a few years passed. In the middle, they quarreled countless times, and finally decided on the general idea. Next, it took another few years. The entire framework was set. After the framework was set, the demon fox grand priest once again cried bitterly. The last time she cried was when she wrote the scroll for the first time. After the framework was set, the most difficult time had passed. Next, it was to fill in the paragraphs. In the meditation world, it was completed in less than a year. After it was completely completed, the two of them slept in the meditation world. After they had enough sleep, it was still the demon fox high priest who wrote the entire scroll. Then the two of them were completely awake and returned to the real world. At this time, a few days had already passed in the real world, because only the first time, Yang Dingtian and the demon fox priest entered the deepest and deepest meditation world. After that, the levels were different, either deep or shallow. In the real world, Yang Dingtian controlled the soul sword and learned this scroll. However, but it failed. After learning the scroll, the soul sword sea of qi was still unable to provide mystical qi for Yang Dingtian's mystical fire. Immediately, the demon fox priest could not help but cry. After crying, the two of them entered the deep meditation world again and started again. That's right, it was a new start, not a modification. The first time it failed. The second time it failed again. The third time it failed again. The fourth time it failed again. In the end, Yang Dingtian and the demon fox priest were almost in despair. Such a simple scroll could not be completed, and it seemed that the method could not be completed, because the last time, the two of them checked carefully and really could not find any problems. Thus, the two of them discussed and decided to start over again. If they still failed, they would have to give up. If they failed again, they would change the direction and let the mystical fire enter the soul sword sea of qi. Even if Yang Dingtian completely lost these mystical fires, they would not hesitate. Thus, in this atmosphere of burning one's boats, the fifth time, they did not know how many years they stayed in the meditation world. In the real world, only 10 days had passed. Finally, when the scroll was completed, Yang Dingtian brought the soul sword to finish comprehending and started to use it. The demon fox high priest's body was trembling in fear. In the end, they succeeded. After failing 4 times, when they were almost in despair, they finally succeeded. The Chaos Emperor grade soul sword worked hard to provide mystical qi for Yang Dingtian's 3 mystical fires. Such a simple scroll was the shortest scroll that Yang Dingtian had ever written, but it was also the most difficult. The demon fox priest hugged Yang Dingtian and kissed him deeply. Then, she stroked his beard and said, "Baby, you know that I can do anything for you. But, at least for a year, don't come and find me again." She was really afraid. She really could not write another scroll in a short period of time. When Yang Dingtian walked out of the demon fox priest's secret room, the beard on his face was already like weeds. His face was full of vicissitudes, as if he had aged a few years. He wrote this scroll for more than 50 days, even longer than the first one. Seeing Yang Dingtian's face, the Naga Shuang was stunned. Then she said, "Finished?" Yang Dingtian nodded and said, "Finished." The Naga Shuang said, "Once you combine with me, you will share life and energy. Shiman Ningning will probably not be able to become your partner." Yang Dingtian said, "If we are fated, as long as our hearts are connected, that kind of thing may not necessarily happen." Naga Shuang'er said, "You actually said such words of spiritual derailment to me before joining?" Yang Dingtian said, "You can read minds. You know what I am thinking." The Naga Shuang said, "Okay, let's go to the ruins of the Naga Empire. Let's combine." Then, Yang Dingtian and the Naga Shuang flew out of the Empire of Darkness again, and flew toward the ruins of the old Naga Empire. Although he did not understand why they had to go to the ruins of the old Naga Empire. Could it be that they could not do it in the Empire of Darkness? But now the one making the sacrifice was the Naga Shuang. Of course, she had the final say. A few days later, the Naga Shuang and Yang Dingtian arrived at the ruins of the old Naga Empire again. This ruins, which only had a quarter of it left, had indeed maintained a relatively long period of peace. Until now, there had not been any drastic changes. Aowo, Naga Shuang, transformed again, suddenly turning into her original Naga form. Then, she held Yang Dingtian in her mouth again, and drilled into the depths of the ruins to find an energy cave. Yang Dingtian was shocked. This kind of combination? It can't be. Even if it was Su Xian and Bai Suzhen's nuptial chamber, it was still a human body, not a snake body. There was no doubt that he was overthinking. After entering the energy cave in the core of the earth, Naga Shuang'er immediately changed back into her beautiful human body. "Husband, you really don't regret it?" the Naga Shuang asked in a hoarse voice. "Of course," Yang Dingtian said. "If you don't regret it, I naturally won't," the Naga Shuang said in a trembling voice. "Okay, then no matter what conflicts we had in the past, you and I are one from now on." Chapter 1167. It was Yang Dingtian's first time being in such a situation. After coming to the chaotic world, he had many women. Some were because of love, some were because of pity, some were because of benefits, and some were forced. When he was with Wu Yu, he was like a little bottom, but he was favored by the other party. When he was with Vulture, it was more because of benefits and needs. When he was with Qin Mingli, it was completely a lie. At this time, he was with Naga Duga Shuang. They said that they had no feelings, but they had very deep feelings. But when it came to feelings, there was a huge gap between the two of them, and it was a gap that was difficult to mend. Before, Yang Dingtian was Shuang'er's sky, her earth, and her only support in this world. After the complete transformation, Naga Shuang became the sky, the earth, and the one and only supreme in this world. The relationship between the two of them fell into a temporary confusion and contradiction. For a while, the two of them could not find an accurate position. Of course, Yang Dingtian broke free from this dependence and used his wisdom to kill the Demon King. Moreover, his soul sword broke through to the demigod level. This was a revolutionary event. Therefore, Yang Dingtian asked for the role of living off a woman. The two of them were once again in the right position. But now, Yang Dingtian was once again in the role of the benefactor. Naga Shuang wanted to give half of her energy to him and share the demigod body with him. Yang Dingtian did not like to be bestowed by others, especially by his own woman. But if it was for the sake of the big picture, then he was not so pedantic. "Husband, before the complete transformation, you are my sky, my earth, and my whole world," Naga Shuang suddenly said. Yang Dingtian stared at Shuang, waiting for her to continue. Shuang continued. "After the complete transformation, I will become the supreme of heaven and earth. I am high above, and I am extremely greedy for energy. But I am a Naga who has lost her own kind, and Medusa is my enemy. Regardless of whether she is a fox demon or a human, she is not my kind. Every race could only find a home in front of their own kind. You are the only one of my kind, so you are still my whole world." As Naga Shuang kissed him, she said, Ever since I was born, I've been alone. When I was in the Temple of Blood, everyone felt that I was a monster, and only Dugufengwu treated me well. However, she was away most of the time, and I was alone. Later, I swallowed countless deep-sea Xian poison and became Naga. Most of the time, if I'm not alone in the cave, I'm in your spatial ring. I'm still alone. After I completed my transformation, I was high and mighty, invincible, but I was still lonely. Naga Shuang continued to kiss him deeply and said, "Husband, every Naga is lonely. In the ancient Naga Empire, there were many Naga, but from the moment Naga were born, they had no parents. Their bloodline came from the fallen divine dragon. Naga and Naga didn't interact with each other. All Naga were isolated, and they were constantly swallowing energy to become stronger. All the loneliness was for the moment of estrus, because on that day, a member of the opposite sex would barge into your life and share everything with you. There would be no secrets between the two of you, and there would be no gaps between the two of you until eternity. At this moment, Naga Shuang's body was boiling hot, and her delicate body was flushed red. Her body was blooming from inside out. She gently lifted her delicate body, stuck out her tongue, and kissed young Dingtian deeply. "Husband, the Demon King is wrong. Our Naga's eternal loyalty to our partners is not because of our greed for energy, but because of our complete loneliness, and we need to find eternal dependence." Naga Shuang gently gritted her teeth and said in a trembling voice, "Please become one with me." Then, Naga Shuang slowly sat down facing young Dingtian. Suddenly, the beautiful Naga Shuang at the top of the pyramid and the human young Dingtian completely became one. Boom! Immediately, be it young Dingtian's body or consciousness, both of them exploded. An unprecedented feeling and energy fiercely exploded from the depths of Yang Dingtian's body. Yang Dingtian had thought that this was the peak, but he didn't expect that this was just the beginning. This intense feeling was stronger than ever before, and even surpassed the feeling of floating and shattering when breaking through to the half-saint or saint level. This feeling was like a mortal who had gone through 1,000 hardships to find the great Tao, and walked in complete darkness. Suddenly, an immortal realm descended from the heavens, and countless divine lights poured into his body. There was no pain, only an indescribable beauty. That mysterious and powerful energy, accompanied by a wonderful feeling, baptized young Dingtian's energy sea, Xian veins, and his entire body inch by inch. As for Naga Shuanger, she suddenly turned into two figures. One figure was a peerless beauty, the other figure was a golden Naga who entangled the two. Countless amounts of energy poured out of Naga's body, through Shuanger's human figure, and into Yang Dingtian's entire body. From the soles of his feet to the top of his head, from his energy sea to his heart, to his Xian veins, and to every corner. They were all baptized by this mysterious and powerful energy. Boom, 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 boom. His energy sea expanded again and again, and was reborn again and again. His cultivation soared crazily. Of course, only a small part of the energy that entered his body from Naga broke through Yang Dingtian's energy sea. Most of it was transforming his energy sea and body. It transformed his 9 Yang Xian veins and human body into a demigod body. What was a demigod body? It could change heaven and earth, and it was omnipotent. It could reverse heaven and earth, and it was omnipotent. His entire body had become an extremely powerful body of energy. It was almost invincible. It was almost immune to most of the damage in this world. At the same time, Yang Dingtian and Naga Shuang's bodies seemed to have become a huge energy vortex. It crazily devoured the energy of the ruins of the old Naga Empire. Of course, to be precise, the old Naga Empire did not have any energy. It was devouring the energy of this world. Semi-solid Xianqi crystals poured into Yang Dingtian, and Naga's energy sea like a tide. An hour later, the sacred and wild ceremony had finally come to an end. Yang Dingtian and Naga Shuang were completely silent. Then a mysterious feeling came over him. He could clearly feel Naga Shuang's breathing, her heartbeat, and all her vital and energy states. But it was different from what he had imagined. He could clearly feel her attachment. He only had a beautiful and hazy feeling of what Naga Shuang was thinking. It was not very clear. Fool! You will only be able to understand what I am thinking, and what I want to say when I want to communicate with you. Naga Shuang didn't open her mouth, but Yang Dingtian clearly understood what she wanted to express. It was amazing that they could understand each other without saying a word. What if they were thousands of miles apart? Let alone thousands of miles. Even if we are in another space, we can communicate telepathically, Naga Shuang said. Of course, she still did not speak. She only communicated telepathically. So Yang Dingtian curiously raised his fist and punched himself. He wanted to see if Naga Shuang would hurt. Naga Shuang could not help but roll her eyes at Yang Dingtian. We just share energy, life and soul. We don't share our senses. If that's the case, won't it be very strange when we do that? Yang Dingtian suddenly trembled. Yes, if they shared their senses, it would be very strange every time they made love. He quickly abandoned this strange idea. Naga Shuang continued. Of course, if you are seriously injured, I will also feel pain. If your life is in danger, I will also be at my last gasp. Because we share our lives. Yang Dingtian. Then, I love my children very much. What about this feeling? Naga Shuang turned her head and said, I don't know. Don't ask. There is no such precedent in Naga. Yang Dingtian could clearly feel the other party's jealousy and strong possessiveness. Are we going to New Naga right now, kill Boyi, and destroy the scroll of greater space technique? Yang Dingtian asked. Naga Shuang hesitated for a moment, and made the relevant energy calculations. Yang Dingtian was able to easily read the calculation method in her mind. Soon the results were calculated. Now that the soul sword was at level 50, it was not safe to go to New Naga. It would be better to break through another level. That way, the success rate would increase by about 20 to 30%. Yang Dingtian understood that if the soul sword broke through level 51, the power of the three mysterious fire lightning might increase from level 56 to level 59. In this way, the success rate of killing nearly 60 Naga descendants would increase by about 20 to 30%. Because Boyi, the chief of the descendants of the sea snake in New Naga, had a total of about 50 people including the elders. Well, how long will it take for the soul sword to break through level 51 here? Yang Dingtian asked. Naga Shuang said, the sea of energy of the soul sword is much smaller than the sea of energy of the Naga, so it will take about a month to break through level 51. Yang Dingtian. Okay, then we will go to New Naga after the soul sword breaks through level 51. Naga Shuang suddenly said, Husband, your greater space technique was originally a secret, but now we don't have any secrets. I also know about it. Yang Dingtian said with a smile. But you don't have the dark mystic fire. Whoosh! A dark mystic fire emerged from Naga Shuang's fingers. Yang Dingtian was shocked. Even such a thing could be shared. That was too amazing. Then, Naga Shuang suddenly said, Husband, there is one more important thing that you don't care about? Yang Dingtian asked, What is it? Naga Shuang said, Don't you care about how many levels you have broken through? What is your current cultivation level? How many levels? Chapter 1168. After the ceremony, Yang Dingtian hadn't paid attention to how much he had broken through. The Naga Shuang said, At first I thought I would fall to the 31st step. But husband, your sea of energy and bloodline are stronger than I expected. And the energy stored in them is also more than I expected. That's why my cultivation has only fallen to the 33rd step. Yang Dingtian and the Naga Shuang were currently sharing energy and life force. If the Naga Shuang was at the 33rd step, then Yang Dingtian was naturally at the 33rd step as well. Yang Dingtian asked, Then did you lose more than half of your energy? The Naga Shuang nodded. More than half. It takes a lot of energy to transform your Xian veins, sea of energy and body. The Naga Shuang had been at the 39th step. Now that she had fallen to the 33rd step, she should have lost more than half of her energy. It should be close to 70%. Yang Dingtian should have felt guilty and apologetic, But there was no need to say anything now. No matter the reason, the two of them had become one from today onward. They couldn't be separated, and they had absolute mutual benefits. Therefore, there was no need to feel guilty or anything. Yang Dingtian asked, "Can we pass on our 33rd step cultivation to the next generation of Naga?" The Naga Shuang shook her head. "Neither of us can do anything to the other, but we can't let ourselves be trapped. We can't exhaust our energy." Next, Shuanger said, "Husband, although it's a bit late to make a last-minute effort, the soul swords will be devouring energy for the time being. We shouldn't rest. It's good if we can increase our cultivation even a little bit." Yang Dingtian nodded. The Naga Shuang transformed into her Naga form again, and began to sense every energy point in the ruins. The ruins of the old Naga Empire were a huge profound energy formation. Before the destruction of the Naga Empire, it had to provide energy for hundreds of thousands of pyramids, so it had an absolute balance and perfect distribution of energy. However, after the Great Cataclysm, this place became a ruin, so the energy supply and distribution were also destroyed. The entire ruins were still crazily gathering all the profound energy in the world, but the distribution was already very uneven, so it had been collapsing and tearing. Although things had calmed down for the time being, the distribution was still unbalanced. Soon, Naga Shuang found the 3 energy points and told Yang Dingtian their coordinates in her mind. Whoosh! Yang Dingtian's primal chaos emperor-grade soul sword turned into a bolt of lightning and burrowed into one of the energy crypts. Naga Shuang stepped forward and repaired the cracks in the energy crypt. Next, the soul sword quietly devoured the energy and began to break through. The entire process was controlled by Yang Dingtian's consciousness. "Husband, let's go down then." After Naga Shuang finished speaking, she directly drilled into the heart of the ruins, into the second energy cave. Then, she closed the crack and quietly inhaled and exhaled. Yang Dingtian found that Naga Shuang did not become particularly sweet and clingy after intercourse with him, nor did she want to stick to him every day as a newlywed. Moreover, after intercourse, she did not have a strong desire for intimacy between their bodies. Perhaps, she would have to wait until the next estrus period before she would ask for intimacy again. On the contrary, in terms of spirit, the two of them were constantly coexisting. It seemed that the way Naga couples got along was completely different from that of humans. The union of humans was like a kind of need. Naga couples, on the other hand, were like a kind of nature, like breathing air, going on all the time. Usually, it was difficult to feel anything, but once it was gone they would die immediately. She didn't know if this was another interpretation of love turning thin when one's love was strong. Sensing that Yang Dingtian was thinking about this, Naga Shuang chuckled and did not say anything. Then Yang Dingtian drilled into the third energy cave. Then, he used a very special kind of energy to close the crack that he drilled into, and the entire cave was intact. Next, Yang Dingtian did not immediately devour the qi, but gradually waited for the qi here to become rich. Every energy cave was equivalent to a qi eye of the qi condensation array. It would condense the qi of the entire world to this point. The qi density was getting higher and higher. Finally, it reached the peak. If it was the Yang Dingtian of the past, he would not be able to bear it, and his body would have exploded. But now, he was a demigod, and his entire body had been completely transformed into energy. He was willing to endure the powerful qi pressure. Alas, after the explosion of the ruins, the power of the condensed qi had weakened many times. Previously, almost every energy crypt contained xian qi that had solidified into crystals. But now, the qi was at most in a flowing semi-liquid state, which was about 100,000 times more powerful than ordinary qi. It was several times weaker than before, but the density was frighteningly high, and it was not something that any human could bear. Yang Dingtian used his consciousness to control the Chaos Emperor Great Soul Sword, and desperately devoured the qi. At the same time, he was devouring the semi-liquid qi energy. Countless qi surged into his qi meridians, and into his qi sea like a tide. But he did not feel any pain like before. Yang Dingtian's qi meridians were now vast and boundless. No matter how much qi there was, they could easily accommodate it. He was only afraid that the qi would not be rich enough. Compared to the vastness of his qi meridians, Yang Dingtian's qi sea could be said to be boundless, like the vast starry sky. Originally, with such rich qi, it would take at most a few hours for him to break through a level. But now, after a few hours, there was almost no reaction from his qi sea. It was really like a small stream entering the ocean. Because Yang Dingtian and Naga Shuang shared cultivation, Naga's qi sea was 100 times larger than that of a human of the same level. Previously, if Yang Dingtian wanted to break through a level, it would take less than a day. Now it would take at least more than a month. Moreover, it would get harder and harder. Yang Dingtian calculated in his mind. Even if the ruins did not collapse and were not destroyed, according to this speed, they would continue to cultivate. It would take about 190 years to break through to the 50th level. Of course, the cohesion of the ruins was constantly dissipating and degenerating. After about a few decades, the qi gathered in the ruins would be very difficult for Yang Dingtian and Shuang to break through. The only breakthrough point could only be the Empire of Darkness's Throne of Darkness, and it would take hundreds of years to devour the qi there to break through. And to defeat Medusa, they had to break through to the demigod realm. But now, it seemed that breaking through to the demigod realm was really as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Suddenly, Yang Dingtian could not help but throw away these thoughts. It was better to solve the crisis in New Naga before thinking about the problem of dealing with Medusa. One person, one Naga, and one Emperor-grade soul sword were constantly absorbing qi. About half a month, they changed the energy cave. More than 100,000 times the qi sea's density was constantly pouring into the three's qi sea. After cultivating for a month, the Chaos Emperor-grade soul sword had indeed broken through from the 50th level to the 51st level. And Yang Dingtian and Naga Shuang had broken through from the 33rd level to the 33rd level, rank 1. After a full month of devouring, they barely broke through to the first level. It could be seen that the Chaos Emperor-grade soul sword's qi sea was much smaller, so it was easier to break through. Yang Dingtian simulated and calculated over and over in his mind. With the cultivation of the 51st level, the three mysterious flame lightning released should have a lethality of the 58th level. Within a diameter of about 30 meters, it could kill 60 Naga, who were close to the demigod realm. It should be enough. The only problem now was that the sea snake Naga patriarch, Boyi, and his 50 elders had to gather together in a 30-meter diameter semicircle. Let's go, Yang Dingtian said. Then, he and Naga Shuang rode on the soul sword and flew away from the ruins of the old Naga Empire at lightning speed. After arriving at the endless void, Shuang said, "Husband, let's experiment here. The key is to test whether the black hole can hide the three mysterious flame in the isolated space." Yang Dingtian nodded. He first used the darkness flame to create a dark vortex. This darkness flame became a black hole that swallowed the surrounding space, forming an isolated space. Whoosh! Yang Dingtian used his consciousness to control the soul sword and directly entered the isolated space. Whoosh whoosh whoosh! He released the void crack fire, the demon spirit demon fire, and the million spirit demon fire. Three mysterious flames also bloomed in this isolated space. Then he connected the three mysterious flames to the soul sword. The Chaos Emperor-grade soul sword injected mysterious qi energy into the three mysterious flames. Of course, this was just an experiment, so only 1/10 of the energy was injected. But even 1/10 of the energy was extremely amazing. The three mysterious flames were released to the extreme and burned in the isolated space. From the beginning to the end, only Yang Dingtian's consciousness could see all this. From the naked eye, nothing happened at all. Everything was invisible. Then, Yang Dingtian controlled the isolated space and flew farther and farther away. After flying for tens of thousands of meters, the three mysterious flames violently collided. At the same time, the isolated space created by the dark vortex was directly torn and completely disappeared. Boom! An earth-shattering energy. A terrifying light that was tens of thousands of times brighter than the sun suddenly burst out. The endless dark void was instantly illuminated. The entire dark void started to twist and distort. Then, the dark void that was born after the expansion of the dark matter could not withstand such a powerful energy, and directly exploded, and was destroyed. Yang Dingtian and Naga looked at each other, and were incomparably amazed. Just 1/10 of the energy. This power was not inferior to the Demon King's Sea of Qi explosion. If 100% of the energy of the level 51 Soul Sword was injected into the three mysterious flames, the power of the explosion would be astonishing. Suddenly, Yang Dingtian was full of confidence in eliminating Bo Yi and the Sea Serpent Elder. "Let's go to New Naga and kill Bo Yi," Yang Dingtian said. Of course, he also wanted to kill Hai Xian. Chapter 1169. After leaving the ruins of the old Naga Empire and returning to the human countries, Yang Dingtian briefly entered the Empire of Darkness. More than a month had passed. At this time, the entire Empire of Darkness had increased to tens of millions of people. Dozens of colossal dark dragons had continuously traveled between the Empire of Darkness and the world of ice and snow, transporting an astronomical amount of fresh water. Almost no one would have thought that the colossal dark dragons, who had once wreaked havoc in the human countries, had now become the greatest helper of the humans. The former lairs of evil ways had also become the last refuge of the humans. After entering the Empire of Darkness, almost none of the higher-ups of the Council of Light could be seen. Even the higher-ups of Little Western Paradise could not be seen. In the entire Empire of Darkness, the highest leaders for the time being were Ling Wu and Wulingzi. This was because the two of them had second-grade evil spirits. They could sit on the throne of darkness and have a certain degree of control. Only a portion of the second-tier higher-ups of the Council of Light remained in the Empire of Darkness to maintain order. The rest of the higher-ups of Little Western Paradise and the Council of Light were all outside, organizing a great retreat. The higher-ups of the Mermaid Empire had also entered the Empire of Darkness on a large scale. However, the Mermaid Queen Violet still led many of the higher-ups of the Mermaid Empire, as well as the underwater races whose wisdom could not enter the Empire of Darkness, to the depths of the Southeast Sea. According to the original plan, this portion of the underwater races of the Mermaid Empire would enter the ruins of the ancient Sea Serpent Empire. When the Great War came, they would guide the dark matter and close the gate of the ruins of the Magic City, allowing all the underwater races to be protected by the dark matter. However, Yang Dingtian was lucky enough to meet Yinyan and Jia in the Empire of Darkness. They were bringing their children to visit the people in the refuge. What a coincidence! After all, Yang Dingtian had entered and exited the Empire of Darkness many times, but he had never met his wife and children. Moreover, he was pressed for time, so he couldn't go and watch his wife and children get intimate. This was because his wife and children had their own matters to attend to. Most of the time, they were helping to appease the people. This time, Yinyan and Jia brought along Yangli, Yang Yichen, Yang Yi, and a few other older children. It had been a long time since he had seen these children, especially Yangli, who was almost 10 years old. At this time, she was wearing a tight little robe and already looked like a little adult. When he saw Yang Dingtian, his eyes lit up. Then, he brought his younger siblings forward and bowed. "Greetings, father." Yang Dingtian could not help but feel a little complicated. In his impression, Yangli was still a babbling baby. Later on, she became a domineering little boy. However, in his memory, Yangli was only 4 or 5 years old. At that time, he was still attached to Yinyan and was full of complaints about himself. At this time, he had already become a big child. His originally round little face was now thin and long, revealing a slightly youthful handsomeness. Unknowingly, his children had already grown so big. From the beginning to the end, he had grown up with them for less than a month. Therefore, at this time, when he brought his younger siblings and bowed to him meticulously, Yang Dingtian's heart suddenly twitched. Yang Dingtian did not assume the posture of a strict father. Instead, he could not help but reach out and gently stroke the top of his head. Although Yang Li was not yet 10 years old, he was already about 1.5 meters tall, reaching Yang Dingtian's chin. At this time, when his father stroked his forehead, he was first stunned and instinctively wanted to shrink back. Then his eyes suddenly turned red. "You are the older brother. Take good care of your younger siblings for me," Yang Dingtian said gently. This sentence seemed to give Yang Li great courage. He even gritted his teeth and said, "I will, father." Yang Dingtian rubbed his head and used a little more strength. Then every child gently rubbed the back of their heads. The girls even picked them up and kissed them. Then he came to Yin Yan and Jia's side. Yin Yan looked at Yang Dingtian obsessively and suddenly said, "Husband, you have changed so much. You seem to be glowing with divine light. You seem to be several years younger all of a sudden." This was not wrong. Ever since he married Naga Shuang, Yang Dingtian also had a demigod body. His body did seem to be permeated with some divine light. Yang Dingtian gently pinched Yin Yan's chin and then said to Jia, "Who is the supreme commander in the Empire of Darkness now?" "It is the Demon Fox High Priest and Master," Jia said. The master she mentioned was Dongfang Minmi. Then Jia said, "Master should be leading the army to patrol the various shelters now. The Demon Fox High Priest is participating in research in Organization X." Yang Dingtian said, "Come here." Jia followed Yang Dingtian into a small office on the side and closed the door. Yang Dingtian said, "I will immediately enter New Naga with Naga Shuang and assassinate the next generation Naga patriarch Boyi. Once we succeed, there is a high chance that we will be able to stop New Naga's invasion. However, this news should only be known to the members of the Doomsday Committee. Do not spread this news to anyone else. All the evacuation work must continue." "Yes," Jia replied. This Doomsday Committee was established to deal with New Naga's invasion. Its members included the Silver Dragon Temple, Little Western Paradise's Joint Council, Council of Light, Mermaid Empire, Naga Empire, Demigod Race, and other forces. Currently, the Naga race only had less than 1,000 members, but Queen Poisa still became the representative of the Doomsday Committee, and day by day Bella became the representative of the Demigod race. The entire Doomsday Committee involved 2 planes, 7 tribes, and had replaced the Council of Light as the highest authority. If she was only Yang Dingtian's wife, she wouldn't have the authority to convey Yang Dingtian's orders. But not only was Jia his wife, but she was also the next chairman of Little Western Paradise, one of the 3 highest clerks of the Doomsday Committee. The other 2 were Yin Zhenu and Song Lihua. Aside from their own duties, these 3 clerks were also Yang Dingtian's secretaries, so it was their duty to convey Yang Dingtian's orders. Yang Dingtian immediately wrote down this order on the energy scroll, stamped his emblem, signed his name, and handed it over to Jia. Subsequently, he turned around and was about to leave. Suddenly, Jia asked with a trembling voice, "Husband, can you return safely?" Yang Dingtian replied, "Don't worry, I'm practically invincible now. Even if I fail, I'll be able to return safely." That's good." Jia's eyes reddened, but she still couldn't help herself and hugged Yang Dingtian tightly, sobbing. "You don't know how much we sisters and children have missed you." Yang Dingtian kissed her hair and gently told her, "I know, after this crisis, we might be able to stay together forever." Jia nodded. "Even if the apocalypse really does come, as long as we're together as a family, I'm not afraid of anything. Even our children aren't afraid." Yang Dingtian kissed her on the lips and told her, "You and Wuyu are big sisters, so when I'm not here, the 2 of you have to take care of Yin Yin and the others, as well as our children." I will." Jia kissed Yang Dingtian on the lips, and impatiently stuck out her tongue to deeply kiss Yang Dingtian. She wouldn't have done this under normal circumstances. But now that Yang Dingtian was right beside her, she really couldn't accept not kissing him. After the kiss, Yang Dingtian walked out of the small room. Outside, Yin Yin stood there with reddened eyes. She whispered, "Husband, Sister Ro is leading the other sisters and master's wife to cook all kinds of food for everyone. Sister Ya and I are clumsy and don't know how to do it, so we came to comfort these frightened people." Yang Dingtian gently hugged her waist and kissed her on the lips. "Well done, I'm going to go on a long journey, and I'll be back in a while. Take care of our children while I'm away." "I will." Yin Yin nodded desperately. Finally, Yang Dingtian kissed her on the lips and flew away, leaving the Empire of Darkness. After leaving the Empire of Darkness, a golden light flashed, and Naga Shuang followed closely. She was a little unwilling to follow Yang Dingtian into the Empire of Darkness, and she didn't want to meet Yang Dingtian's wives. "Let's go." Then, the two turned into a stream of light and disappeared into the sky above the Empire of Darkness. They flew toward the first dark domain at a speed of more than 5,000 kilometers per hour. After passing through the first dark domain, the second dark domain, and the third dark domain, this time, Yang Dingtian didn't enter New Naga through the Great Maelstrom, but found a precise coordinate. This coordinate was the place where Yang Dingtian jumped out of New Naga. That meant that the coordinates of New Naga's imprisonment space were here. However, in the third dark domain, New Naga was just an extremely small singularity. In the boundless third dark domain, it was extremely difficult to find the coordinates of this singularity. The location and distance couldn't be off at all. Subsequently, Yang Dingtian tried to create a spatial door at a few of these coordinates in order to jump into the New Naga Empire. But he failed. There was no other way. He had to enter through the Great Maelstrom. Yang Dingtian and Naga flew into the endless void, and then entered New Naga through this huge maelstrom. He didn't know where he would be randomly teleported to this time. Yang Dingtian's luck was very bad. He and Naga Shuang entered the Great Maelstrom at almost the same time, but they were teleported to two places in New Naga. Whoosh! After a long period of blurriness, Yang Dingtian appeared in a room that was decorated in gold and jade. He was randomly teleported to the old capital of New Naga. "Nari, is that you?" Then an extremely familiar voice came from inside. It was Hai Xian, Queen Hai Xian's voice. She was now in the bathroom. He didn't know if he was lucky or unlucky, but Yang Dingtian was directly teleported to Hai Xian's room. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.